I'm going to put it right.
Good morning. The May 7th, 2025 meeting of the Board of Estimates is now called to order. The board continues to meet in a hybrid format. For those here in person, please take a moment to silence your cell phones and other electronic devices. For those attending virtually, if you desire an opportunity to speak, we ask that you please keep yourself on mute until the chair recognizes you. When you are called upon, please announce your name and organization and speak loudly as you present. I do want to recognize, in addition to the regular board members, we are joined by my colleague, Councilmember Odette Ramos from the 14th District. Thank you for being with us, Councilmember. At this time, I would ask Clerk Celeste Amato for any corrections, additions, and noted abstentions for today's agenda.
Thank you, Mr. President, and good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning. We have the following corrections to note this morning. SB 2511388 for BBMR. This is a fiscal 2026 ordinance of estimates under action requested. We are striking the entire statement and inserting the board is requested to approve the FY26 ordinance of estimates. For SB 2511037, settlement agreement and release. For Inger Stevenson, the amount is $397,000. In the subject line, we are striking Inger Stevenson and inserting Maya Milan et al. In the action requested, we are striking what is listed and inserting the board is requested to approve settlement agreement and release with Maya Milan, Tajane Madison Bahrain, and Kayla Pittman. And for SB 2511087, redemption condemnation of 205 and 215 North Duncan Street, dollar amount $226. In the subject line, we are striking 205 and. Under the action requested, we are striking 205 and under impacted address, we are striking 205 North Duncan Street, 1687 and 077. We have the following walk-ons to note this, or to place on the agenda this morning at the request of the Council President. They are SB 251140, employee travel request for Antonio Glover. The board is requested to approve an employee travel request for Councilman Antonio Glover to attend the ICSC 2025 conference on May 17th through the 20th, 2025 in Las Vegas, Nevada. The transaction amount is $4,332.51. We are walking on SB 2511491. This is an employee travel request for Council President Zeke Cohen. The board is requested to approve an employee travel request for the Council President Zeke Cohen to attend the Las Vegas, Nevada for ICSC's 2025 conference on May 17th through the 20th, 2025. The transaction amount is $2,422.95. SB 2511394, employee travel request for Councilwoman Sharon Middleton. The board is requested to approve an employee travel request for Sharon Middleton to attend the Las Vegas, Nevada ICSC 2025 conference on May 17th through the 20th, 2025. The dollar amount is $4,568.51. And SB 2511396, employee travel request for Jermaine Jones. The board is requested to approve an employee travel request for Councilman Jermaine Jones to attend the ICSC 2025 conference on May 18th through the 21st, 2025 in Las Vegas, Nevada. The transaction amount is $3,682.44. We have the following deferral to note this morning, SB 2511048, Department of Housing and Community Development. This is a grant agreement for Somerset 2 and 3 public infrastructure funding. This is deferred until May 21st at the request of the Council President. We have no withdrawals to note this morning. We've received the following protests or statements for SB 2511347, Law Department. Resolution, removal of owner-occupied properties valued under $250,000 from the 2025 tax sale. There is a statement of support received from Nika Namdi. Did I pronounce that correctly? Okay, thank you. We have the following non-routine agenda items today. SB 2511402 for the Department of Audit's biennial performance audit of the Baltimore City Recreation and Parks for the fiscal years ending June 30, 2023 and June 30, 2022. We have SB 2511388. This is for BBMR, fiscal 2026 ordinance of estimates. And I would like to also remind all the board members, please don't leave without signing this at the end of the meeting today. Thank you. I cannot let you leave the room. SB 2511198 for the Department of Human Resources. This is a position creation for the fire department. The dollar amount is $64,911. SB 2511347 for the law department resolution, removal of owner-occupied properties valued under $250,000 from the 2025 tax sale. SB 2511037 for the law department settlement agreement and release for Maya Milan et al. SB 2511093 for the Law Department Settlement Agreement and Release. Hildebrand versus McFadden, the dollar amount is $75,000. SB 2511384, Department of Planning, fiscal year 26 through 31, final CIP recommendations. SB 2511377, Bureau of Procurement, BOE presentation on procurement transformation. SB 2511400, Council Employee Travel Request for Antonio Glover. SB 2511491, Council Employee Travel Request for Z. Cohen. SB 2511394, Council Employee Travel Request for Sharon Middleton. And SB 2511396, Council Employee Travel Request for Jermaine Jones. We have the following abstentions to note this morning. The Honorable Mayor Brandon M. Scott is abstaining on the following items. SB 2510630, Health Department Provider Agreement with Johns Hopkins University. SB 2510488, Health Department Provider Agreement with Johns Hopkins University. SB 2510374, Health Department Provider Agreement with Johns Hopkins University. SB 2510593, Health Department Provider Agreement with Johns Hopkins University. SB 2511180, Health Department Provider Agreement with Johns Hopkins University. SB 2510648, Health Department Provider Agreement with Johns Hopkins University. SB 2413426, Health Department Amendment 1 to Agreement with Johns Hopkins University. SB 2414539, Health Department Provider Agreement with Johns Hopkins University. SB 2414540, Health Department Provider Agreement with Johns Hopkins University, and SB 2511352, Department of Transportation Minor Privilege Application for Johns Hopkins University. The Honorable President Zeke Cohen is abstaining on SB 2511388, BBMR Fiscal 2026 Ordinance of Estimates. The Honorable Comptroller Bill Henry is abstaining on all travel requests and travel reimbursements, as well as SB 2511388, BBMR Fiscal 2026 Ordinance of Estimates. City Solicitor Ebony Thompson is abstaining on the following two items: SB 2511407, Department of Law Travel Request for Ebony Thompson, and SB 2511243, Department of Law Travel Request for Ebony Thompson. And the Director of Public Works, Khalil Zaid, is abstaining on SB 2511027, DPW Relocation Reimbursement for Khalil Zaid. We have no votes to acknowledge for the routine agenda, and that concludes the opening statement, Mr. President. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. At this time, I ask for a motion to approve and adopt the opening statement as read by the clerk.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. The opening statement has been adopted. I now direct the board members' attention to the memorandum from my office dated May 7th, 2025, identifying matters to be considered as routine agenda items together with any corrections, additions, abstentions, and no votes that have been noted by the clerk. I will entertain a motion to approve all the items contained on the routine agenda.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded. All those in favor of approving the items on the routine agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. The ayes have it. The routine agenda items have been approved and adopted. Seeing no further questions, we will now move to the non-routine agenda. The first item on the non-routine agenda is SB 2511402 from the Department of Audits for the biennial performance audit of the Baltimore City Recreation and Parks for the fiscal years that ended June 30th, 2023 and June 30th, 2022. This request is to note the audit. On behalf of the audits, we have Auditor Josh Pash. Auditor Pash, the floor is yours.
Okay.
Good morning, Mr. President, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Comptroller, honorable board members. My name is Josh Pash. I'm the city auditor, and I'm here today to present the biennial performance audit for Baltimore City Rec and Parks, effectiveness of controls over resource management and payroll. Next slide. I will be going over our objective and scope, some background information, and our findings. Next slide. So our audit objective was to assess the effectiveness of controls over resource management and payroll. We looked at fiscal years 23 and 22, and we looked at the payroll processes, including overtime. We selected 4 divisions for review: aquatics, rec centers, park maintenance, and urban forestry. We noted that Rec and Parks has a significant number of employees, including temporary and seasonal employees at the aquatics, community rec centers, and park maintenance divisions. And these employees are assigned to locations, remote locations that sometimes do not have supervisor personnel on site. For example, in the absence of supervisor personnel for aquatics, there are aquatics leaders. In the absence of aquatics leader, the aquatics park pool manager or pool operator assumes the role. And then there are 2 aquatic center directors that visit the sites regularly. And we noted that there are 23 pool locations. On average, each aquatic center director is responsible to approve timesheets for 12 pool locations. Next slide. So we noted the 3 risks that we included in our scope. Financial risk. The financial risk is that without monitoring, employees will be paid for regular and overtime not worked. The fraud risk is that employees can sign in and out when they're not on site. And then the operational risk is that without monitoring or verifying the hours worked, they could be errors in those amounts recorded, and therefore those will be incorrect. Next slide. So to give some context, we looked at the 4 divisions, and we did a comparison of total gross salary to overtime. For aquatics, we noted they have 112 employees with about $1.5 million in gross salary, and then about $46,000. So overtime made up about 3%. For park maintenance, they have 100 employees, about $5 million in gross salaries, $500,000 in overtime, and the overtime made up about 11%. That was for fiscal year 22. Next slide. For fiscal year 23, similarly, aquatics with 154, about $2 million, 107,000, and percent of overtime 5%. Park maintenance, overtime made up about 12% of gross salaries, and urban forestry made up about 17%. And the next slide, I'll put that in a little bit more graphic format. So, for aquatics, as we can see, the number of employees is increasing over fiscal years 22, 23, and 24. And in addition, overtime is also increasing. For rec centers, we see that the number of employees at first stays flat and then increases, and that during that whole time for those 3 years, overtime is also increasing. Next slide. For park maintenance, we see that the number of employees actually was decreasing, and then the rate of increase for overtime. And then for forestry, we also see that the number of employees is a slight decrease, and then you can see the increase in overtime. And those amounts are in thousands for overtime. Okay, more background information. So we noted that there are a number of systems that they use to track. The primary system is Workday, and the process basically is an employee, they log into Workday, and they clock in and clock out. The first approver is going to be that aquatic center director or park district manager or rec center director, and they're going to approve those. And then there's a second approval on timesheets, which is the chief financial officer for Rec and Parks. So we noted that basically those divisions are required to log in. And next slide, please. Okay. So continuing on into the background. So like I said, the primary system for capturing time entry is Workday. That is a cloud-based system, and we noted that that's accessible for anywhere. So anywhere you have an internet connection, you can log in and log out. And I just want to reiterate that most of these, or a good number of these locations, don't have a supervisor on site. We also noted that they have backup controls or secondary controls. These were controls that were in place before Workday, and they were still in place when we did our audit. So we looked at those as mitigating controls for the Workday risk, which we noted above. So DigiQuadix is a cloud-based software that Aquatics uses. Employees can log into their account, and then that system is equipped with a global positioning system. So when they clock in, it logs in where they're making their entry or restricts their entry. And then rec centers use CivicRec, and that they record the time that they enter the civic center or the rec center. Next slide. Okay, for Aquatics, when the employee arrives and leaves the Aquatic Center, they sign in on a manual sign in and sign out sheet. And then at the end of the pay period, the Aquatic Center head manager reviews those timesheets on the manual. They sign off for the approval and indicate that they are accurate. For rec centers, some rec centers use an attendance sheet to mark if the employee was present. Basically, the lead there would go ahead and check if they came in. It does not actually record arrival time or departure time. For park maintenance, we see that the park maintenance, they come into the maintenance centers, and then they go ahead and they log into Workday, and they also have a manual sign-in sheet. And at the end of the day, they also return to the rec centers, and they basically sign out in Workday and on the manual timesheet. Okay, now to the findings. So we noted that the rec centers, 3 divisions timesheet approval process is not effective. We did testing that showed that it wasn't effective, which I will get to in a minute. And the effect is an increased risk that Rec and Parks is paying employees for hours they did not work. Again, this is a risk and not a finding that we found out that that was actually occurring. We were testing the controls of the process. Okay, to the detailed results. So for Aquatics, we looked at 67. Again, we looked at the DigiQuadix system to see who was using those. Of those 67, we only found that one of the employees was consistently logging into that DigiQuadix. They don't use CivicRec. And then we also looked at the sign-in sheets. We saw that 9 of the 67, we are consistently signing in and signing out. And then we went to reconcile that to Workday, as we mentioned the risk with Workday, and that these were backup controls. Of those 9, only 3 of those sign and sign out sheets agreed to Workday. For rec centers, we looked at 29. Consistently using that backup system or the mitigating control system, CivicRec was 3, and they don't use sign and sign out sheets, so we didn't do that part of the testing. For park maintenance, we tested 29. 14 of those were consistently using sign and sign out sheets based on our sample testing, and of those, we could only reconcile 8 to Workday. Next slide. Okay, secondary control. Okay, for Aquatics division, they require employees to sign into DigiQuadix. However, they don't have to sign out of DigiQuadix. And then for the rec centers, they use the CivicRec to record when the employee signs in. And then we also noted that all the employees are not consistently signing into either of those systems. So number one, for those systems, only capturing half the picture, and that the employees are not consistently using that. For the secondary control, which is the manual sign-in sheets, the Aquatics and park maintenance do not use those sign-in sheets consistently. Our testing was to look at the evidence of the sign-in sheets, and they were not able to provide evidence of those sign-in sheets, which resulted in the findings. We had discussions with them of the lack of sign-in sign-out sheets, and according to Aquatics, they had a break-in at one location, and the sign-in sign-out sheets were lost at that time. And then park maintenance commented that they had shredded the sign-in sign-out sheets for our fiscal years when they switched locations. So our recommendation is that Rec and Parks Director works with BSIT to utilize again geofencing control in Workday. Geofencing is a technology that prevents sign-in and sign-out sheets outside of a certain physical area location. We recommended geofencing because the functionality exists in Workday. However, with all of our recommendations, if the agency finds another control method that meets the risk, we're open to that. These were This one we figured was the most cost-effective as it's built in. Okay, finding 2. Rec and Parks does not have sufficient controls to validate overtime hours worked. So we noted the aquatics, community rec centers, park maintenance, and urban forestry divisions do not consistently document the justification for overtime. So for 22 and 23, we looked at 70 employees with 444 regular and required overtime requests. Regular overtime is overtime that's scheduled in advance and is not mandatory. For example, if there is a track meet coming up, they'll ask employees if they'd like to work that and get overtime. And the required overtime is mandatory. So if an employee has a callback, for example, there's a downed tree and it needs to be fixed immediately, that is mandatory overtime. So of our 70 employees and 444 overtime requests, 78 of those overtime requests, or 17%, did not have documented justification in Workday. Workday has a comment field which can be used to put that documentation in there. For those 78, we did look for alternate methods to document the cause, such as emails or overtime request forms, and that was also not available to justify that overtime. So the effect is, without documenting the justification for overtime, we cannot substantiate that overtime was necessary, and we also cannot do analysis to identify causes of overtime. Next slide. Okay, causes. So the primary cause is that the city's admin manual related to overtime and callback work is dated 1990, and the policy does not align with those processes in Workday. So there is a conflict there of basically using the policy and Workday. So in Workday, there is a comment field when overtime requests are made, and there is also an option to upload attachments such as an overtime request form. So we noted that Rec and Parks divisions are not required to utilize that comment field in Workday or to attach an overtime request form in their overtime requests. And then Rec and Parks had a draft policy for payroll and time attendance policies and procedures, but that policy was not implemented at the time of our audit. Recommendations. We recommend that Rec and Parks require or to implement the policy that they have over overtime, and that the fiscal division periodically train payroll approvers, and that can be included in the onboarding process. And then we recommend the Director of Finance in Workday require that comment field so that each time a overtime request is put in, that justification is required to be there. Next slide. Finding 3. Okay. Rec and Parks has the opportunity to improve staff allocation used at aquatics, park maintenance, and parks and forestry. We did note that Rec and Parks does have a process to estimate staffing levels. The other 3 locations, aquatics, forestry, and park maintenance, do not have the systematic methodology to compare staffing needs of the site to meet operational needs or regulatory requirements, and to set a baseline for each season, considering the known factors such as people signed up for summer camp or signed up for summer swimming lessons. We also looked for different sources and ways that can be used in resource planning. So when we did that, we noted that there was an inaccurate employee status. So we looked at the employees of Rec and Parks to see that the locations in Workday were accurate, which could potentially be used for resource planning, and we found that that is not consistently accurate for the employees, the location captured in Workday. We also noted 15 former employees that are still categorized as active and not terminated in Workday, and these 15 former employees were terminated between July of 22 and September of 24. Again, that was looking at the ability to use those Workday locations as a total resource management. I do want to note that we did not find any instances of fraud in the selected sample. Basically, after the period that those employees were terminated, not in the system, but no longer work in the city, there were no payments made to them. And then we did note that Rec and Parks HR did initiate the Workday termination process for 3 of those 15 employees, January, February, March of 2025, and that's as of our audit work. Okay, finding 3 causes. Rec and Parks does not have a document methodology to guide management on how to estimate staffing locations, and they do not have the tools to perform that. So the effect is, without this knowledge of accurate staffing, we can result in inefficient staffing of resources, excessive overtime, and then the risk that we may not be able to meet regulatory requirements, for example, staffing pools and rec centers, and to meet the operational needs, which may reduce the quality of services to our constituents. Next slide. For example, COBRA requires a certain number of lifeguards to be on site. So, for example, if there are 1 to 30 individuals at the pool, a lifeguard is required, and then additional lifeguards are required for additional groups of constituents or clients of the pool, as an example. Okay, next slide. So recommendations. We recommend Rec and Parks design methodology for determining staffing needs, document that in formal policies and procedures, implement a tool to manage those, and then each year and season document what they come up with for the resource needs and allocations, and then also to address the workday status of employees, require divisions to periodically review active employees report in Workday to verify that they are still current employees and the location is correct. So for example, separate employees will be deactivated in Workday, and if employees transfer to another agency or location, that they would be noted as such. So at this time, I will take any questions. I do want to thank the Rec and Parks team and our audit team for their efforts and their work on this project that helped us complete the audit and make it a success.
Thank you, Mr. Auditor. I will also thank you for including the picture of the mayor and I leaping into Patterson Park Pool. I will note that after this, I got it. After the Celtics smash the Knicks, we are both eligible if there is an NBA team that wants to pick us up. We'll also note the city administrator is very proficient at pool basketball, so she may also be ready for the WNBA. But with that, questions from the board about the audit?
Oh, I have lots of questions about the WNBA, but
I will, hearing and seeing none, I think we're going to wait till Rec and Park delivers theirs and then may call you back up. But thank you for the thorough report.
Thank you.
thank you.
Director Moore? Dr. and Director Moore?
Dr. Director.
Thank you.
The floor is yours.
Awesome. Mayor Scott, Council President Cohen, Comptroller Henry, the members of the BOE. I'm Reginald Moore, Director of Baltimore City Rec and Parks. And so first I do want to acknowledge and thank the audit team for their audit. What I'm here to do today is to kind of give some context into Rec and Park. So our agenda is quick overview of where we are as an agency, then discuss the 3 findings, and then close with questions. So I want to start by, this presentation summarizes the audit findings, management responses, and a corrective action plan related to payroll controls, timekeeping, and staff allocation for Baltimore City Rec and Parks. It highlights the challenges and continuous improvement efforts since 2017 and development of the playbook as a strategic framework for rebuilding capacity and strengthening internal controls. And the corrective actions outlined reflects BCRP's commitment to the operational excellence, accountability, and compliance with city standards. But I want to start by, as noted, I want to acknowledge and thank this administration for the growth that we are continuously seeing in our rec centers. But we also know with that growth, we are also seeing an investment of over $200 million in new playgrounds, basketball courts, rec centers, and swimming pools. Also, in response to the increased demand in forestry. The inconsistency of storm-related emergencies, urgent service requests, and the cross-agency support for citywide operations play a role in seeing some of the growth in the overtime for forestry. Additionally, some of the additional overtime that you see is related to the support of the citywide events like AFRAM, Charm City Live, also the city's employee cookout, as well as other cleanup efforts and the initiative to make sure that we focus on improving our tree pits around our city. Also, we have continued to find ways that we can expand our programming, such as I believe I've seen everyone at our Charm City Lights events, which happens during the holiday season. The number of participants that we're now getting for our Parked and Pumpkin, over 3,000 cars that we're seeing during that event, as well as expanding opportunities such as Cookies and Caboose and the amazing Fetch and Petra Garden Party event that we had last year, all are opportunities that we're boosting our community engagement. And then one of the important strategies of Mayor Scott has been around the focus of summer youth engagement strategies, which Rec and Park is in front and center, and how we're extending Rec Center hours, hosting pool parties, as well as creating safe, fun spaces for youth of all engagements. So with that being said, I'll jump right into our first finding. Time tracking, BCRP 3 divisions timesheet approval process. Key concerns: employees may work at a location where they are not a direct supervisor by their timesheet approval and creating challenges in verifying attendance and actual hours worked. What I want to highlight here is that there's always a supervisor on site. The timesheet approver may not be on site. For example, in aquatics, we have aquatics leaders, as well as we have pool managers that manage those pools on a daily basis, that is managing that staff, while we do have the 2 aquatic division leaders that goes and verifies those as well. Also, the division use of manual or electronic sign-in, sign-out sheets, and then employee record hours for Workday. Recommendations for Baltimore City Rec and Parks to work with BSET and utilizing a geofencing control. Our response: the agency do agree with the finding and is committed to improving time reporting and internal controls. All employees, again, I want to highlight, are supervised on site, even if their timesheet approval is based at a different location. The tools such as DigiAquatics, Civic Rec, manual signings are carryovers, but it's not a formal form of control. Workday is the center focus for how we pay our staff when it comes to time. And BCRP supports exploring geofencing or enhancing attendance tools as recommended by the audit team. So here's our corrective actions. 1, we're going to strengthen internal controls and Workday compliance. We're going to retrain all of our timekeepers, supervisors, and managers. Our target date for that is to have that completed by June 15th. Reinforce supervisor accountability with training checklists. We plan to have that implemented by June 30th, and division-level audits to monitor compliance. The second one is initiate coordination with BSET and DHR around the geofencing. Our goal is to have that initial coordination by July 15th, and our goal is by December 15th that we will have had coordinations, evaluated the feasibility and operational implementing programs such as geolocation, geofencing, and controls, and also understand what is the recommendation as well as the cost impacts. And that will be done by December 15th of 2025. Finding 2, BCRP does not have sufficient control to validate overtime. Employees do not consistently document justification for overtime. The recommendation was the implementation of current draft policy. While the audit team did mention a policy that was shared, it was shared by our former CFO, but it was a policy that had not been approved by our leadership team, so it was not a functioning and active policy. Physical division periodically trains payroll approvals, which can be included in the BCRP onboarding process, and the Director of Finance required the comment form to be mandatory. Our response: BCRP agrees with this finding and will develop new leadership-approved overtime policies aligned with the operational needs. BCRP will implement onboarding and refresher trainings for our personnel approvals and supervisors to ensure overtime compliance. And BCR is adding a dedicated payroll staff to expand the staffing there in our payroll team. Our corrective actions is to develop a new overtime policy that is approved by this leadership team. The goal is to have that in place by July 31st. Implement training and onboarding protocols, working with our HR team and our payroll team. The goal is to have that in place by August 15th. Increase payroll operation capacity, and that is adding another additional payroll staff to our current payroll team. And then to work with finance, which finance, I believe, did add a comment around seeing if there's a way of making the Workday comment file a mandatory requirement. Finding 3, staff methodology. BCRP has opportunity to improve staff allocation methodology used to operate aquatics, parks, and forestry. Divisions do not consistently or accurately record employee actual work locations in Workday, and a lack of systematic methodology in aquatics, forestry, and park maintenance. Recommendations was to develop a more formal staff methodology, implement a tool to manage and track these resources, and require divisions to quarterly review active employees' reports. Management this is where there's only an option to agree or not to agree. And this is where we partially agree because as the auditor stated, where they're saying that there was no methodology for aquatics, there is a methodology for aquatics because it is stated by the COMAR and the COBRA rules that states that for every 30 people, you have to have a lifeguard. And the way we have always operated, if we have 2 lifeguards, we're not exceeding that 50 number capacity. When it comes to parks and park maintenance, yes, that is something that we're excited about what we're going to be able to implement through our playbook, our strategic plan that we hope to have finalized. It's in review now with formal policies and implementations in FY26. Our manager's response, additionally, is BCRP staffing allocation inherited by the administrator reflects minimal levels of operations and maintaining service. This goes back to, again, thanking this administration because BCRP has been one of those agencies that has been underfunded over the years. This administration has seen the value and has continued to put more resources, as you've seen from the auditor's report of the growth in employees. So as we're adding more staff, we're able to make those modifications, but there will be a clear strategy from our playbook when it comes to forestry as well as park maintenance. As I stated earlier, the COMAR 10.17.01 states that for every one lifeguard, you can have a maximum of 30 people in a pool, and the next one is an additional 50. So we do comply. And when it comes to our camps, I know the auditor did note that recreation centers did have a methodology, but I want to highlight that we also comply with COMAR when it comes to our summer camps. For every 10 kids, there's only 1 staff member. That's how we dictate our attendance numbers for summer camps each year. Our corrective action is to finalize and adopt the staffing model from our playbook. Our hope would be is to have that adopted by August 1st. Implementation of resource allocation tools, to have that deployed by September 15th, and then to conduct quality personnel reviews in Workday and have that completed by July 31st. And what I would like to note, while there's opportunities for improvement and growth, the auditor did note that, and it's noted in the report, that there was no findings of any fraud or misuse, which I think is extremely important. These are risks that we will address, but there was no risk of fraud at that point in time. And with that, I will open for any questions you all may have.
Thank you, Dr. Moore. I'm going to start with Mayor Scott.
Thank you, Dr. Director. A quick question around, my first question is around the geofencing.
Yes, sir.
About my understanding is that's something that can probably be turned on pretty quickly. What's the timeline you think you have for that implementation? And the second part of that question is for some of those things, for example, like the summer youth engagement strategy, where that isn't an option because they could be anywhere essentially in the city. What kind of workday protocols can we put in for those kind of individuals?
Well, what we will continue to do is that make sure, well, one, to answer your first question, is that we will start working with BSIT because that's something we're going to have to coordinate with BSIT. Our target was to have some action moving by July of this year with BSIT on how we get there. But this may take some time with some associated costs. And so what we was hoping is that we could have this implemented by December. But if we can get it sooner, we want to get it sooner. We truly support that strategy. And to answer your other point, all of our summer engagement activities, there are various supervisors that's present. So we have area managers, we have other people, and we have a sign-up sheet. So we know who's working that day. Those people are checking in. But we want to continue to look at ways that we can improve that. But I want to say that we do have supervisors that confirm that work, and that there's a true sign-in sheet that we have in place already for that.
And thank you. And my second question is, I just want you to say this one in lay terms, not aquatics terms, that Rec and Parks always has the appropriate member of lifeguards at the pools, and what happens if a significant number of folks may call out. You know, a lot of them are young people. They may have to go to college for a day or something. Talk to us about that process and how the aquatics teams make sure that we have the necessary people.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, it goes back to COMAR. If we only have 2 lifeguards, then we're gonna not exceed a 60 person count in our pool. And what we'll have to do at that point in time, we close our pool down. We also
Director, I'm sorry. Just say what COMAR is for the.
Oh yes. So COMAR is a state regulation that dictates how you account for the safety of pools and how you operate swimming pools based on the number of lifeguards that you have on staff. And it states that 1 to 30 is for one lifeguard, and it can go to an additional 20 or plus 50 when you get a second lifeguard. And so, to the mayor's point, if we have a shortage, what we do is we'll know the call-ins and we shift lifeguards around, but we're not going to exceed the capacity based on the requirements of COMAR, because those lifeguards are certified and we don't want to violate any rules or regulations, and we don't want to create safety issues by exceeding that number.
Thank you. And just a related question, as we head into pool season in 3 weeks, we have the appropriate amount already hired, correct?
Yeah. What I will say is that if you all recall, the last couple years you've been hearing other cities talk about the shortage of lifeguards. You haven't heard that from Baltimore City Rec and Parks, because our aquatics team has been doing an amazing job of working with schools. Where normally kids would go and have to pay for lifeguard training, we're providing that service for free in exchange for them working for us. And we've also rewarded our lifeguards with a bonus at the end of the year. So yes, sir, to your question, we are hiring our lifeguards. We will have all of our park pools. If you go by all of our park pools right now, you will see water in our pools, which is a rarity, right? And this is something that we've been focused on. So we're so excited to open up our park pools Memorial Day weekend. We're so excited to bring back online the Towanda Recreation Center pool. We're so excited to bring back online this summer Cold Springs, and we're excited to bring on Walter P. Carter, which the comptroller was a council person when this started. So we're heading in the right direction this year for our pools.
Thank you. And now that you said the pools have water, and let me say that you cannot swim in the pools until Memorial Day weekend. Do not get in the pool ever without a lifeguard. My second question to follow up, Mr. Director, you talked about the overtime policy, and in your response you said that a former employee created a policy that was not approved. Where are we in developing the actual policy to make sure that we are monitoring it in a better way?
Our chief of staff who's here is going to work closely with our HR team to develop a policy that aligns with workday regulations as well as the city's standards to make sure that this policy fits the requirements of the city. Our goal was to have that in place, I believe, June 30th of this year.
Thank you. My last thing, Mr. President, is that, as you know, as a former council member, the rule for having a pool open in your district or former district is that you have to jump in. So the comptroller has to jump in when we open Walter P. Carter in a few months.
That is the rule.
That's good to know. That's good to know. I'm going to need some advance notice on when that pool opening actually is. And this may dovetail with some changes we need to make to the travel policy as well.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to go to Comptroller Henry.
Thank you, Mr. President. Actually, I had a question, but your presentation made me think of another one, which is, does COMAR also set standards for the total number of occupants in the pool, or does Rec and Parks have its own policy for that?
Those standards is set based on the size and the capacity of the pool. Right. So it's based on COMAR doesn't set those standards. Those are established through DHCD and as part of the inspections. Okay. So okay. You measure the gallons of water, the dimensions. So yes, we have a capacity number. Yeah. For each one of our pools. Okay. Okay. I knew there was a capacity number. I didn't know if we came up with it ourselves or if it was part of the state mandate. So okay. But the question I had, and the city auditor didn't dwell on this chart because my question is kind of outside the scope of the audit, but I did notice that at one point when it was showing the increase in overtime for park maintenance employees over the last 2 years, which has been kind of steep, it also showed that the number of actual employees has decreased
very steeply as well, from like 100 to around 50 over the course of 2 years. And so what I wanted to know is Rec and Parks plan to adjust the staffing model so that you have a staffing model that requires fewer employees and that would reduce overtime, or are you trying to hire more park maintenance employees?
Our goal is to adopt the playbook, and in the playbook, it really talks about the methodology around staffing for park maintenance, the X amount of FTEs per square footage of acreage, not square footage. I'm thinking about facility maintenance now. But so we're looking at the new playbook. It does have that methodology, but it will see us have an increase in our park maintenance staff going forward.
Okay. Yeah, and that's not a criticism. I'm not, like, I mean, we used to have 100 just
Right.
2 years ago, so it's not like with the rec centers where, we had 80, but that was 40 years ago.
Right.
So if, it was more of a question of, did that decrease happen for reasons outside of our control and we need to adjust to it, or was that decrease purposeful because we're deliberately, reducing staff by attrition?
And let me just highlight one of the things too that is not noted is that park maintenance used to also have our facility maintenance included, like our building repairs, our utility aids. In this upcoming budget, thank you, Laura, facility maintenance now will have its own independent. So those employees at reduction, also in park maintenance, has a lot to do with us shifting out those building repairs and those utility aids and others into their own area.
Okay.
So it's not like it's a loss of funding. It's just we're shifting people around into other areas, other bureaus.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Yes.
And you please have somebody give my office lots of notice for, because I got to contact like insurance people and, warn my family and stuff like that. So.
I can tell you it's near. It's
Okay.
Okay, the mayor's telling me no surprises for him. Okay, he got a surprise, but the pool is complete.
Okay. All right. I gotta buy like some water wings and stuff. Okay. All right. Okay. Thank you.
I will note that after you jump in, you are then required to play pool basketball with the mayor, city administrator, and myself. And if you win, Celeste gets a raise. So, Mr. Mayor?
Celeste, you will not be getting a raise, that's for sure.
Yeah. That seems an odd way to connect performance to benefit. I think that means Celeste should jump in and beat y'all in basketball.
She can be on your team. That's fair. Look, first off, I want to thank Mayor Scott for the investments in Recreation and Park, Director Dr. Moore. I want to thank you for your leadership. I also do want to thank the auditor for his work on this audit of Rec and Parks. As we, the council, expand our oversight of city services, reports from the auditor and the IG are critical tools on which we rely to identify services and management deficiencies and improvements. And I think that is exactly what we've heard today. And I appreciate you being receptive to the suggestions. This audit has found shortcomings to document, manage, and control staffing and overtime at several divisions within the agency, within Rec and Parks. These are failures that ultimately could result in the waste of taxpayer money and must be addressed immediately, which is why I appreciate both the mayor's question about how quickly we can do geofencing and your response about moving quickly to adopt these findings. The Council and the Biennial Audits Oversight Commission, on which I serve as chair, are deeply concerned about staffing and overtime throughout our city's government and are planning comprehensive and complementary oversight over these issues. Prior to the release of this current audit, the Council prior to the release of this current audit, the Council has planned an oversight hearing chaired by myself as Committee of the Whole to examine overtime and personnel vacancies throughout the city. In advance of the hearing, we have made extensive requests for data and staffing and overtime trends and appreciate your office's work getting back to us. In June, we anticipate a meeting of the Biennial Audits Commission to examine a separate audit report detailing significant challenges in our hiring process. I believe that personnel management practices, particularly hiring and overtime, are areas of risk within our city, and I look forward to working with you, with the administration, with the comptroller to tighten fiscal controls and ensure that taxpayer funding is used effectively and appropriately. And again, I think we see this in a number of agencies where, due to insufficient staffing in a certain division, we then end up having to utilize a lot of overtime. It remains a challenge, I think, writ large for the city. But Director Moore, I do really appreciate your responsiveness, your work with the auditor, and your being willing to receive the feedback and act on it expeditiously. Seeing no further questions, I would entertain a motion to approve this. Oh yeah, we're noting. All right, I will note this item. The next item is SB 2511388, a request from the Bureau of Budget Management and Research for the board to approve the FY26 Ordinance of Estimates. On behalf of BBMR, we have Budget Director Laura Larson. Director Larson, the floor is yours.
Good morning, Mr. President, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Comptroller, members of the Honorable Board. Just trying to make sure that my screen, it shows that I'm sharing. Share. There we go. There we go. Great. Here we go. Present. Good morning, everyone. My name is Laura Larson. I'm the city's budget director. I am here today to present the BOE recommendations for the fiscal 26 budget. As a reminder, the preliminary budget was introduced to the board on Wednesday, April the 2nd. On April 23rd, the board held the overview hearing with city agencies, and that evening we held the taxpayer night for residents to come provide feedback on the preliminary budget recommendations. With that, let's review the numbers that are reflected in the BOE recommendations. The total recommended budget is $4.6 billion. That is up by $420.3 million year over year, or just under 10%. The operating budget is growing by $220.8 million, or 6% growth, and the capital budget is growing by $199.5 million, or 27% growth. The general fund budget, as reflected in the BOE recommendations, is $2.6 billion. That's up by $256 million, or 11% compared to the fiscal 25 adopted budget. The recommendations that are reflected in the BOE recommendations are $18.4 million higher than what was reflected in the preliminary budget. Most of that is due to updates to state and federal grant awards. So I'll break down the changes by each of our fund groups. So in terms of state and federal grants, those appropriations are up by $16.7 million. This largely reflects corrections and adjustments to grants within the health department based off of final anticipated awards for fiscal 26. Special fund appropriations are down by $1.8 million. This reflects final adjustments to casino budgets as well as the Children and Youth Fund. The general fund budget is up by $3.5 million to reflect a number of actions from this year's General Assembly session, as well as additional revenue that we are reflecting for the Convention Center. I'd like to talk through the specific changes that are reflected in the general fund. So first up, let's talk a little bit about income tax. As you'll recall, when I was presenting to you all on our preliminary budget recommendations, I warned of negative headwinds regarding our income tax projection. BBMR is recommending to reduce our projected income tax revenue by $5.9 million, or about 1.2%. Embedded in this recommendation, we are keeping the income tax rate flat at 3.2%, although there was action that passed in this General Assembly session that would allow local jurisdictions to increase their income tax rates to 3.3%. The reason why we are recommending to update our projection is that we are following updated projections that came from the state comptroller's office that were released in March. As part of that update, the state revised their outlook to downgrade growth projections for both fiscal 25 and for fiscal 26. And so the combined impact of those assumption changes is the $5.9 million of lost revenue for fiscal 26. We are recommending, because of the uncertainty associated with this, we're recommending to backfill that lost revenue with unassigned fund balance rather than additional reductions in the general fund. This is something that we'll closely be monitoring as we go into fiscal 26, and we would look to rebaseline as we turn our focus to begin building the fiscal 27 budget. The $3.5 million that I mentioned in additional general fund revenue is allocated to a number of specific initiatives. The first is the Mayor's Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement. The BOE recommendations include funding to transfer 3 additional positions from the American Rescue Act plan to the general fund. Within the mayoralty, specifically the Office of African American Male Engagement, there's a recommendation to allocate $500,000 to expand youth engagement programming within that office. For the Department of Public Works, we are recommending to increase the allocation for various expenditures within the Bureau of Solid Waste by $650,000. Within the Department of Recreation and Parks, following release of the preliminary budget, we were notified that the Gardenville Rec Center that's under construction is ahead of schedule and will be able to come online in fiscal 26. And so we're recommending to allocate 1/4 of costs for that new center that will open next year. That's $200,000. And just to note, that will be the third rec center that will be opening during fiscal 26. In the law department, there were 2 positions that were inadvertently unfunded in the preliminary budget, so we're restoring funding for those positions. That's $285,000. In the convention center, we are recommending to allocate $1 million from the convention center's food and beverage contract that's associated with re-signing a long-term agreement with the vendor who provides those services. Those additional dollars will be used to support the ongoing capital and facility improvements at that location. And then finally, we're recommending to increase funding for debt service by $433,000 just to account for the anticipated increase based off of the borrowing that will be issued in the coming months. As I wrap up, just want to remind the board of a number of milestones upcoming regarding the fiscal 26 budget. So today, we are voting here in this meeting, which will give way to introducing the ordinance of estimates at the City Council at their meeting on Monday, May the 12th. Next Thursday, May 15th, there will be an overview presentation for the City Council to walk through the recommendations in the BOE budget. And that evening, the City Council will hold their annual taxpayer night. Agency budget hearings are scheduled to take place between May the 28th and June 4th, and the final day to adopt the fiscal 26 budget is June 26th. So with that, I can take any questions that the board may have.
Thank you, Director Larson. I want to appreciate a few things first. One is, I thought it was great that you all went out to Coppin last night to do the town hall. I think engaging residents on the budget is critically important, and appreciate the mayor and your team for going out and doing that. And just the more participatory we can make our budgeting process, the better. Also want to say appreciate the additional support for MONSE. I think, unfortunately, due to changes in how the federal government is funding anti-violence work and the kind of public safety work that we have seen prove incredibly effective here in the city of Baltimore, we are seeing some really critical cuts to some of our partners that are in that space, specifically work like Peace Team and other violence interrupters. And so I think, unfortunately, it puts the city in a position where we may have to do more to just maintain the good work that is happening in the anti-violence space. I had two questions and then a comment. One is, I noticed in this updated version of the budget, you utilized some of the fund balance. Was wondering if you could talk about what fund balance is and why the decision to utilize it in this updated budget versus it was not there, it was not being utilized in the preliminary budget that we received. And so if you could just share what fund balance is and then why the decision to utilize it now.
Yeah, and so the city maintains what we call the rainy day fund or the budget stabilization fund, and that is the fund that helps us sort of navigate through turbulent times or to deal with major emergencies that may happen. Separate from the rainy day fund or the budget stabilization fund, we also have sort of the remaining fund balance, and that is sort of the culmination of the difference between revenue and expenditures that are left over at the end of any given fiscal year. So in the preliminary budget recommendations, we did include appropriating some fund balance. There was $40 million that we are recommending to go towards additional capital projects. If you'll recall that, the funding source for that is coming from reimbursement that we had received from FEMA for COVID-19 expenditures. And so we're taking that funding that was part of our fund balance and investing it back into the capital program. We were also recommending to use about $8.7 million in fund balance to take care of a number of one-time expenditures that didn't need a recurring source of funding within the city's budget. And so with these recommendations, we're taking that $48.7 million and increasing it by 5.9 to $54 million. When we look at the city's overall fund balance based off of what is being finalized in the financial statements, at the close of fiscal 26, we have about $167 million sitting in the city's rainy day fund. We have an additional $205 million that's assigned for various purposes, and a portion of what is assigned is to cover these budget actions that I'm recommending today.
Understood. Just so I'm clear, so if typically the fund balance, if we did not utilize it for a specific purpose, would then be transferred into the rainy day fund? Is that how that works?
No. We make an appropriation to we make a contribution to the rainy day fund every year as part of the operating budget. And then what happens with any remaining balance after what gets allocated to the rainy day fund is that we assign that for specific purposes to deal with unplanned risk in the next fiscal year. So some of that funding is being appropriated for these budget actions that I'm talking about. Some of the dollars are being appropriated or being assigned to deal with potential legal liabilities that we might have to deal with in fiscal 26. Some of the dollars are being set aside to deal with some grant uncertainty that we've talked about here. And then some of the funds are being set aside for capital risks associated with the city's capital budget where we may need emergency or unplanned funding. In terms of the city's rainy day fund or the budget stabilization fund, our goal is to have 8% of this year's general fund budget available in the rainy day fund. We're at about 6.6% going into fiscal 25. If we exclude the PAYGO contributions, we're closer to 7 percent. So we're about 1% away from our overall goal. And just a reminder, the use of that fund, the rainy day fund and budget stabilization, that is, there's a Board of Estimates policy that establishes the uses of the funds, the uses of the budget stabilization fund, and when the time period to get those funds repaid.
Got it. Director, I again appreciate particularly the increase to Muncie, where I feel some disappointment is, we had talked pretty extensively about some of the fines and fees. I continue to believe that this is a moment where Baltimoreans are feeling extremely pinched and pressured financially, and between BGE and all the other bills that folks are paying, that now is a really concerning time to be raising fines and fees. Where I fully agree with this administration is if an additional fee or fine is there to deter a behavior that we want to dissuade, such as illegal dumping, such as speeding, I think that's totally appropriate. But there are some other fines and fees on this list that are not about deterring nuisance or any kind of criminality. And so wanted to understand, based on feedback that I provided, and I know many constituents provided as well, why there wasn't an adjustment or any address of that issue.
Yeah, and, hear you loud and clear in regards to, the pressure that our residents are feeling, and fully understand the impacts of, the rising costs and what that means for the average resident in our city. With this approach that we've outlined as part of the fiscal 26 budget, we're actually trying to avoid any sort of additional broad-based increase that would hit all of our residents, like an increase to the income tax or like an increase to property tax. We're not doing any of that here. What we're trying to do here is to take a more targeted approach by looking at things that are very outdated in terms of our schedule of fines and fees. So, of course, we're going to look at things that are focused on deterring some of these quality of life issues in our neighborhoods. But the other thing we have to look at is that when we don't update our fines and fees, or specifically our fees, what that means is that that structure is not keeping pace with the cost of providing that service to our residents. And so by not adjusting the fee, we may be providing an inherent subsidy for certain things that maybe we don't want to subsidize at that level. And so what we're doing is going through a subset of the citywide fees as part of our fee study to look at how much does it cost us to provide this service? What is it? How does that look in terms of what it benchmarks in our neighboring jurisdictions and other major urban peers? And what would we recommend in terms of a new model for that fee? Most of what is in this group one that we're looking at in order to bring recommendations by end of summer, early fall, are in our fire department, in our housing department, and some of our DOT fees. What we found when the city last did a comprehensive fee study, it was in 2008. Even though we did this comprehensive study, we didn't recommend to increase every single fee. Most of the fees that are in this group one were not adjusted in 2008. So you see that a lot of them have not been updated since 2002, and some of them even earlier. So again, what we're doing is we're trying to avoid a broad-based increase and go through this strategically one by one to figure out where should we be to be in line with neighboring jurisdictions and the current cost. And as part of our review, we're looking at who's going to be the primary payer of this, and then who is going to be the beneficiary of this. And so we're going to be able to avoid any sort of broad-based increases that would put additional pressure on city residents.
Understood. What I would say is that I think out of a concern for, again, just the inflation, BG&E, the various pressures that are facing Baltimoreans, I would have loved to begin with the study, understand each individual item and its impact before implementing it within the city's budget. Understand that there is a need always to be updating and addressing any sort of fee and fine structure. But again, just considering the timing of all that is going on, I remain concerned for the residents of this city. On the same topic, the mayor had announced during the State of the City within the next 4 years, pretty significant property tax relief. I think that's important. I know that many Baltimoreans are concerned about property taxes, whether they want to buy their first home, whether they want to be able to live and move within our city. We know that it's been an albatross around our neck for many, many years that we are essentially double the surrounding jurisdictions. And so really support movement in that direction. I don't see it in this initial budget. Can you talk about sort of the strategy and the theory of how we are moving in the direction of property tax reform for residents?
Yeah, definitely. So over the last couple, number of months and even going back, a number of years, the mayor has been working on updating the 10-year financial plan. And so we are very close to publishing the plan. And the plan will include different cornerstones in terms of financial goals that we're trying to achieve. And one of them is property tax competitiveness and really honing in on how do we drive down that rate for residents and businesses that want to operate in our city. And so in the plan that will be released in the coming in the upcoming months, you're going to see recommendations to approach things differently that have allowed our neighboring jurisdictions to have lower tax rates where the city is a little bit of an outlier, but also looking at additional ways that we can identify savings or recurring revenue that would allow us to truly drive down the rate versus shifting it to another source that would end up being paid by residents. And so what you're going to see is, as part of the fiscal 27 budget, our first move in order to drive down that rate, which would be a continuation of what was previously called the 20 cents by 2020 initiative. You're going to see us, implement the next wave of that relief as part of the 27 budget.
Let me get the mayor in here for a question or comment on that.
No, thank you, Mr. President. I'll just say that as we go through this is going to be a really big, but also a big serious thing that we have to work through. And yourself and the comptroller obviously will be making sure that we're giving you the appropriate briefings because we're going to be doing things differently, but also doing things you heard from the budget director more boldly to make sure that we have this impact. And that will come with required conversations about how we operate as a city. And we look forward to, over this time period, having those conversations with you all.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Could you say a little bit more about the 20 cents by 2020 plan and how this is a continuation of that?
Yeah, so as part of the first 10-year plan that was released in 2013, there was a program called the 20 cents by 2020 initiative. And so what that did is it got our effective rate for residential owner-occupied properties down from just over $2.26 per $100 of assessed value down to where we are today, which is $2.48 per $100 of assessed value. One of the way that we were able to achieve that, looking back in the last 10-year plan, was from the casino revenue and the Horseshoe Casino coming online and being able to invest a portion of that recurring casino funding in terms of turning around and providing rate relief. For this next wave, in order to provide additional rate relief, we either have to identify a brand new revenue source like the casino fund, or we have to look for ways that we can optimize existing revenue streams to get more revenue, or look for ways that we can save money. And so what you're going to see in the 10-year plan is sort of the combination of initiatives that we believe could help us to get there to achieve what the mayor had stated in terms of getting the rate under $2. I think a big piece of that is work that that has been led by the Deputy Finance Director, Bob Senemy, around looking at the city's tax credits. We know, so just for context, if we look at tax credits as part of the fiscal 26 budget, we are offering almost $130 million just in terms of credit, various tax credit programs. And so looking at how we optimize those, review those to ensure that they are aligned with the stated goal of each of those credits, and look for ways that we can, bring in different reforms that still allow us to achieve the goals of those programs, but then also at the same time make sure that we're not over subsidizing stuff. And so that's one area in particular that work has been ongoing for the last year that we're going to start to see recommendations come out of that group.
Just
Quick clarification from the comptroller.
Yeah, quick clarification. In that 130 million of tax credits, that includes the targeted home
That's correct.
earners tax credit, which is what's providing
Yeah.
the 20-cent tax reduction for owner occupiers. Do you have the breakout there? I mean, if you don't worry about it. But I feel like it's a fairly substantial one.
Yeah, so the targeted homeowners tax credit in fiscal 26, the cost of that program is $32 million.
Yeah, right. Okay.
Yep.
Appreciate that and appreciate the history. I believe my two friends were on the city council and voted on that. I was not at the time, so do appreciate.
Was that not to 11? Okay. All right.
In any case, appreciate that history. Just to kind of make a fine point on the tax credit work group, is there anything you can lift up specifically that would contribute toward reducing property taxes from that work group? I don't know that the findings have all been publicly presented or not, but just curious. I guess the idea being if we eliminated one credit and then we're able to put that toward some property tax reduction, is that kind of where you're headed?
Yeah, so BBMR released a report sort of outlining our overall inventory of tax credits in the summer of 2022, and it just highlighted, what we are currently providing, and then potential things that could be examined or looked at for, as options for reform. And so what the tax credit work group has done over the course of their meetings is each meeting is dedicated to a different credit. And then they sort of walk through the background of how the credit was established, talk a little bit about how it's being used, and then they actually provide different use cases to say, like, this property received the credit, and here were the sort of the how it performed and kind of what the overall impact was to the city. And then as a group, they sort of debate, what should happen with that credit. One of the concepts that has been talked about in that setting is if you look at other ways that we incentivize development in the city through the budget, we have these things called but-for tests. So as part of the projects, people have to come in and say, I can't, without this additional incentive, but for this investment from the city, I can't make my project work. And
Right.
so I need this, can we have this investment in order to make the project work? We don't do that on our tax credit projects. And so we don't have any way to know if the subsidy or the credit that we're providing is aligned to the actual costs. And so we have an opportunity to think about how could we bring some of those concepts that we do, specifically around TIF projects into how we look at tax credits. And what that would allow us to do is move away from this like one-size-fits-all credit model to where we can align credits better to the individual needs of projects. So we're still supporting and incentivizing, these different types of developments that are aligned with the goals of the credits, but we're not over subsidizing through a one-size-fits-all. That's one example of what is being talked about as part of that work.
Got it. Mr. Mayor?
No, thank you, Mr. President. I just want to say we can't put the the horse before the cart here. There's a lot of discussion that has to happen when we talk about this tax credit work group. The budget director is phenomenal, but she's also not like deeply the person running and working through that group with others, and we have to make sure that we don't get into a point where it looks like we're conflating things. We will absolutely make sure that you have all the information you need from that work group. We know that many of these things have not been looked at in a long time, and when it comes to this versus the 20 by 20, I love Mayor Rollins Blake like a sister, but there's nothing I love more than beating her at something. So we are absolutely going to beat her tax reduction program, and we have to. And I just also want to remind everyone, especially when it comes to the fines and fees, that again, we are trying to do this in a way, as you heard from the director, that does not broadly go after anybody or any particular thing, but also this is a tough time. But tough times is when you have to do the tough things. Because when you think about when I was just a staffer and the comptroller was a council person, and we went through this before, it was during the middle of a recession. And decisions were made to not change those things. And here we are, over a decade later, and now it's being kicked. The can can't be kicked anymore. I was in Drew Hill Park, for example, on Sunday for a birthday party at a pavilion. And a gentleman came up to me and said, "Hey, Brandon, I want to ask you a question. What's going on with the landfill fee? Why is the landfill fee going up so much?" And I said, "Well, it hasn't been updated since 1993. He said, "Okay." That's all you had to say to me. He said, "Really?" I said, "Yep." He said, "I'm good." And we just have to understand, in addition to focusing in on folks who are blowing through red lights, speeding through our neighborhoods that have schools, doing the illegal dumping, all of those things, not maintaining their property, that we absolutely need to hit and tag more. We also have to look at things like the EMS, right? We know what's happening there. We know who's going to pay for it. But also we had a very great conversation at this board about how our EMS, 911 EMS, is overburdened by things that actually don't need EMS service or EMS help. This is a tough time, but we also have a deep responsibility to not do to those who are coming behind us what others have done to us. And I think that you can rest assured that we're going to balance all of those responsibilities with all the pressures that our residents are feeling as well, to make sure that we're not overburdening them any more than the world is at this moment.
I appreciate that. I think the question is around where the burden falls ultimately. I want to ask about some other approaches to potentially revenue, such as, I know there's been conversation, I see my colleague over there, about taxing vacant and abandoned properties at a higher marginal rate as one potential source. I know there was bills in Annapolis related to that. I know we're currently having conversation about the payments in lieu of taxes that are large nonprofit anchor institutions pay. I know there's even conversation, I was talking to one of our senators about specifically nonprofit landholders where there's vacant property that's been left to languish for years, and in some cases decades, where there's a desire to move or get off the pot and
Yep.
increase the taxation, what the city is able to collect on those properties. Because I think, to sort of the mayor's point, in some cases that does cause harm. It's not speeding and hitting a kid, it's not dumping in a neighborhood, but when you leave your property to languish for years and years and years in East or West Baltimore, in a neighborhood where there's already challenges around vacancy, we know that does some real harm and structural damage to the folks that are still living there. And so just curious if you could talk, I don't see it in this budget, and obviously these are some bills that have been either passed recently in Annapolis or, maybe coming to the city and to the city council, but some of those approaches to revenue, and I do see the mayor with his hand up before I get to Director.
Yeah, I'll say that, yes, and I think it's all of the above approach. What has happened in the past, Mr. President, is that we've seen them like pick and choose things and this has to be all in the above. That's why we talk about the 10-year financial plan, right? The 10-year fiscal plan directly addresses the issues with nonprofits. It addresses the issues with tax breaks. It addresses all of those issues and the legislation, and it does even, we talked about with vacant properties in that. And actually, we were blessed to have Delegate Boyce lead that effort in Annapolis, and that was part of our agenda in Annapolis. And we were going to have conversations about all of those things, and that's why we're looking at it in a global sense, that we're not making the mistakes of the past. The first 10-year fiscal and financial plan was a great idea. I say this to the Deputy Finance Director, who was the Budget Director then. Originally, myself, the Comptroller, we all had a lot of questions about what we were doing in the present, and we had to be convinced to think about the future, right? If we did not make those tough decisions, and there were a lot of tough ones right now, that $85 million gap probably would have been a $300 million gap today. And I think that we're talking about this in exactly the way that you're speaking of looking at all of these things, fines, fees, tax breaks, how we deal with nonprofits, all of it together to understand that there isn't no silver bullet and that we have to do all of the tough things. Now, you do one of the best things that Mayor Bloomberg has ever said to me is that you do the tough things first. You don't wait, you don't kick the can, you do them now. And that's why we're trying to come at it with this approach that is based in right now, but looking towards the future.
And I think I would just echo the mayor to say that all of these things we want to, I don't know why it went through. All these things we want to accomplish.
You got to push the button that has the little, there you go.
go.
Oh, it's green. How did she do that?
Mine just went green too.
Is it the battery?
Mine is blue. She's a wizard.
Mine's green.
Yours just went green too?
Testing? Oh, you can't, it's not
It's
actually,
not red.
yeah.
It might be the battery.
Mine's still good.
Flashing green now.
Here.
If you've seen Logan's Run, this is the point where you can fix that.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, that's weird.
Everybody's battery's running out.
Director, if you could keep that whole.
Yeah, so just want to echo the points that the mayor made in terms of how this relates to the 10-year plan. And one of the foundations of the 10-year plan, the foundation of the 10-year plan, is to have a structurally balanced budget. The 10-year plan has really exciting goals, like driving down our property tax, increasing our capital investment, continuing investments in different core city services, like what Director Moore was just talking about with Rec and Parks. We don't do any of those things if we have $85 million budget shortfalls every year, and if we have to use all of these ideas in order to just balance the budget year in and year out. So some of the things that you're mentioning, like the nonprofit pilot payment, that's something where additional revenue that we get from that program, we'd like to be able to tie it to one of the 10-year plan initiatives instead of balancing the budget. So we'd like to use any additional revenue to pay our employees more, or to do additional capital borrowing every year, or invest in property tax relief for our residents. And so I think that's one thing that we really have to keep in mind is, like, how do we make thoughtful decisions every year about how we balance the budget so that when we do have these new sources of revenue, we can invest them in new things to really focus on how we grow our city. The other thing I heard you talk about was the differential tax rate for vacant properties. Part of that is that legislation was passed in the prior council, and we're working towards being able to implement that. That will come online in fiscal '27 when we have the new tax system in place.
Please stand by.
No, it's not the battery.
It's not batteries. Hold on, y'all. Give me a second. All right, somebody. I'm good now.
I'm good now,
How do you
too.
get yours to work?
I got
No,
it.
now,
There you
now
go.
we're
and
all
now,
good.
Oh, I work too.
That is what a Mervo education pays for.
This brought to you by Mergenthaler Vocational Technical High School Diploma, everybody. For the record, the city solicitor went to city. That's all I'm saying. The comptroller went to Loyola. That's all I'm saying.
Well done, Mr. Wizard. All right, let me, Mr. Comptroller. you
I
got-
have a question.
Or, I'm sorry, Mr. Director, you got a question?
Yeah, very quickly. It's talking about the capital program quickly, coming from the capital piece with experiences, if you could tell us about the impact, the positive impact in terms of increasing the capital piece this year.
Yeah, so you heard us previously present in terms of the growth numbers in the capital spending. As I was sharing, the overall capital plan for next year is almost $930 billion. And the locally backed share of that is the highest capital budget that the city has had in the last 20 years. And I see this as really being a critical first step to where we need to go in order to get to a better place with capital. So our previous approach to the capital budget, and especially things that have to be funded by our local sources, so think facility improvements for city agencies, think all of the infrastructure for rec and parks, all of our road infrastructure, that's all either had to come from general obligation borrowing, pay-as-you-go capital and like additional reserves that we've been able to identify. And so what that has meant is that in any given year, our needs so far outpace what we had available in terms of the approximately $100 to $120 million. And so what we saw was that we were having to divide that funding across a bunch of different projects. And so we were only funding portions of things. And so what that meant is it was taking us longer to do our projects because we were having to accumulate appropriation. It also meant that when we were able to do projects, they were more expensive than they needed to be, because with every capital project, the cheapest day to do the project is today. And if you wait till tomorrow, it's more expensive, and it gets more expensive every day after that. So what we need to do in the capital budget is we need to have sufficient funding in order to fund complete projects so that our agencies can get projects designed and constructed in realistic timelines versus these long, drawn-out processes that we've had. And I think what you see in the fiscal 26 budget is the first step of many in terms of getting there. The planning department, and you're going to hear the director of capital budget talk in a little bit, the planning department issued new guidance this year to fund complete components of projects that should allow us to get projects into contract quicker. We'll have fewer projects, but we'll be able to execute them in more effective timelines. And why I think that matters very much to the operating budget is because when we have failure of infrastructure, it becomes an operating budget problem. We saw that when we had the garage collapse at the police department headquarters a couple of years ago, and we're still trying to sort of grapple with how we repair that project and move forward. And so every year that we don't make significant progress on that is another year where we're accepting a huge financial risk that really is holding us back.
Well, one quick comment first in relation to, I think you were talking about, you had mentioned a state senator was looking at addressing vacants that are owned by nonprofits. One of the things that we've occasionally raised is that nonprofits are already supposed to be paying property taxes on any property they own that is not being used for a tax-exempt purpose. So if you're a nonprofit and you own a building and it's vacant, that building is not being used for a nonprofit purpose. The state law already addresses this. The State Department of Assessments and Taxation has not been good at removing tax exemptions from properties that aren't actually being used for nonprofit purposes anymore. They do a check-in where they check in supposedly every year or 2 or 3, but if the owner says, yes, I'm still using it for a nonprofit purpose, that's the extent of their check. So one of the things that I had talked to HCD about a while ago was, could the city pursue this proactively? Could we send a list of all the buildings with vacant building notices to SDAT and sort of nudge them into removing tax exemptions on a proactive basis rather than waiting for us to do it ourselves? So that's something we could do, along with, of course, it would always be great to have additional pressure at the state level on a state agency. You would also, I thought you made reference to the rainy day fund, like the amount that you shoot for. And the reason I wanted to go back to that is, as a council person, a previous deputy director of finance, who I will not name because I'm still scared of her, told the council that the goal was for the rainy day fund to be able to cover 2 months of operations, which seemed unrealistic at that point and still does, frankly. And so you said, I thought you said 8%?
Yes.
Of the general fund?
Of the subsequent year's general fund.
Of the
budget.
subsequent year's general fund, which would be substantially less
Yes.
than 2 months. Do you have any idea when that goal changed to what it is now?
I will go back and pull the BOE policy for you all. I know that it was in the time that I was with you all as a budget analyst. It was under,
So in the teens?
yes, it
Okay.
was in that 2011 to 2015 timeframe is when we changed it, but I
Okay.
can pull that exact policy. What I can also share is that how much fund balance jurisdiction should have is a really tricky question.
Yeah.
I serve on the budget committee for the Government Finance Officers Association, and that's the professional organization that puts out the best standards for local governments to approach their financial practices with. I've been on that committee for 4 years, and we've been grappling with the fund balance guidance for my entire time on the committee.
So there is currently no best practice?
There is a best practice that they have, that GFOA has, but what the board, the GFOA board and folks on the budget committee have grappled with is that it's not a one-size-fits-all.
Okay.
So my hometown of Sidney, Nebraska, with a population of 5,000 people, they need to have a different,
Yeah, that's a
2
different
months
standard,
of
right.
operating costs for Sidney, Nebraska is a lot different than 2 months of operating
Right.
costs for the city of Baltimore. And I think at a national best practice level, that's what we're grappling with, is the fact that not every city is the same. The other thing, we've had a lot of emergencies that we've had to face as a community looking back the last 10 years. And we've only tapped into this source for a number of those events. It's not the first place that we look to go, and we have found that we've been able to navigate some uncertainty just by virtue of sort of how we approach the city's annual budget. What I will say with that is, that's where, in terms of what the exact amount should be, is, that's why we shoot for that 8%. I don't think that there is a perfect answer. I think one of the things that to keep in mind that makes us slightly stronger versus some other jurisdictions is that most of our, like the large sources of our revenue, property tax, income tax, highway user revenue, those are sort of more like formulaic rate things that are, once we know like what our assessments are, we know what our
Yeah.
property tax revenue is going to be. So we have a lot more stability than, let's say, a jurisdiction whose budget is 75% sales tax, and it's driven by the demand
up,
at any
right,
given
yeah.
day. And you saw that during the pandemic. Local jurisdictions that, in the West that are primarily sales tax communities, they were having much more hardship in their budgets in 2020 because all of a sudden the economy stopped and their sales tax numbers like fell to the floor. We were still collecting property tax revenue and income tax revenue, and we had more inherent stability because we do have those demand-based revenues in our budget, but they're a much smaller share compared to other cities.
Do we get sales tax revenue?
No,
Yeah.
no,
Yeah, I was
no.
like, I
But
didn't think-
I'm using it as a comparison. We have more stable more stable revenue sources compared to a sales tax jurisdiction where they're going to have more volatility based, when the years are good, they're going
When
to
they
be.
have a local sales tax along with whatever the
Yes.
state does or doesn't do.
Yes, and if
I
you
got
look at jurisdictions in the West, like in the western portion of the country, like in Colorado or California, you see that a lot of those local cities are funded, like their largest funding source would be a
It's sales
sales tax.
Okay.
Director, I know that in Annapolis this year, in spite of the severe fiscal constraints that they were facing, Delia Clippinger and some other folks were able to find us some support for in-rem and the court proceedings. Are we able to match or find some additional support, knowing that ultimately that is one of those areas where if we are able to expeditiously move vacant houses through the system, bring them back online, bring them into habitability for a resident, that's an area where we could see additional tax revenue, and we could also see less blight in a community, see more people living their best lives in Baltimore. So curious about that.
Yeah, we are. The team at the circuit court had requested $270,000 for additional city positions to supplement the additional state resources that were part of the state budget. We were able to reallocate $270,000 from the Department of Housing to the circuit court in order to meet the full staffing requests that they had submitted.
Great. Thank you, Director Larson. I'm going to note that I am going to give abstention as this is coming before the City Council. I look forward to a really robust conversation with you in front of the Council, with Chair McCray and myself and all of our colleagues. Do want to thank you for diligence and back and forth that we've been able to have, and looking forward to a fruitful conversation about all of the elements of this budget, as well as the 10-year plan, which is frequently referenced, and looking forward to seeing that as well soon. So I got one more question from Mr. Comptroller.
Well, it's not a question. It's sort of, I need to explain my vote, so to speak.
Please explain your vote, sir.
And also calling back to our time, all three of us have been district council people. And so in that regards, budget season was about the hours spent pouring through the agency detail and the days spent interviewing agency heads about the specifics of their requests. And now, as the council president, that's not going to change. You're still going to have to, you're going to still have both of those. The mayor has changed his participation in budget season dramatically because, as stated, he works with finance and the budget department to put together the budget. But as comptroller, for the last several years, I have voted to send the BOE recommendations onto the council for consideration as the ordinance, mostly out of a sense of obligation and process, despite the fact that the agency detail books that I was used to relying on are not done until after the Board of Estimates votes on its recommendations. Despite the fact that there is no series of Board of Estimates hearings where agencies come in and we get to question agency directors about the specifics of their requests. And despite the fact that, frankly, our office is not really part of the budget formulation process in any way, other than we submit our office's budget requests. And despite the fact that I often feel conflicted about the policy decisions that are encompassed in these recommendations. For example, in this year, as we spoke about last week, I appreciate the mayor's willingness to increase investment in capital spending in general and in recreation centers in specific, both of which I support. For all the reasons you listed why it's a good idea for us to do more investment in capital. However, the FY 2026 recommendations before us, for me, do not invest nearly enough in other areas that are just as important to our residents, including community libraries, cultural institutions, and our zero waste programs, which DPW has been promising for years and requested be included in the budget, but it was left out of the version that's actually before us today. And so I have come to the conclusion that it would be more appropriate for me to deal with a preliminary budget in which I have no stake in authorship by abstaining. And I believe that doing so will allow me to more objectively advise the city council in their consideration of the ordinance of estimates, in the hopes that they can be persuaded to finish the job that the mayor and his administration are starting here today. And that's why I will be abstaining on the BOE recommendations before us.
Thank you, Mr. Comptroller. I've been told my mic doesn't work, so I'm going to borrow yours if that's cool. Yes, sir. All right. With that, any additional questions or explanations of votes? Hearing and seeing none, I would entertain a motion to approve this item.
So moved.
Second.
It has been moved. There we go. This item has been moved and properly seconded. All those in favor of approving this item say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay.
Abstain.
Abstain. This item is approved. I will note abstentions from Comptroller Henry and myself, City Council President Zeke Cohen. The next item is SB 25, and this item is approved. The next item is SB 2511384, a request from the Department of Planning for the board to approve the FY 26 through 31 capital improvement plan. On behalf of planning, we have Deputy Director Sarah Paranalam. Sorry if I mispronounced that. Director.
She's on.
Oh, she's on. Gotcha. Director, who is with us virtually, the floor is yours.
Hi, good morning. How are you?
Coming in very, very faint.
Can you hear me?
Oh, that's better. Much better.
Okay. Sorry, I've got a cold, so my voice is maybe a little bit reduced. Good morning, Sarah Parnillo, Baltimore City Department of Planning. The city charter requires the Planning Commission to make recommendations for a 6-year capital improvement program. At its March 13th, 2025 meeting, the Planning Commission approved recommendations for the FY26 capital budget and the FY26 through 31 capital improvement program. Since that time, a series of changes have been made to update the budget. The BOE recommended capital budget is $76.9 million lower than the capital budget presented in the preliminary plan. And the notable changes include the following. There were adjustments to several federal grants, most notably moving $85 million in federal funds for West Baltimore United back from fiscal year 26 to fiscal year 27. And this accounts for the majority of the change from the preliminary plan. There were also adjustments made to add various state grants to reflect the final state budget. And finally, since the Planning Commission voted, the spending plan for Pimlico Local Impact Aid was finalized. And as a result, 12 projects were added to the capital budget for a total of $2.9 million. The total Board of Estimates recommended capital budget for fiscal year 26 is $931,987,286. And happy to take any questions.
Questions from the board? Seeing and hearing none, just curious why the capital budget, from my read, went down from the preliminary to this budget?
Yeah, the primary change in terms of it being reduced is...
Sorry, Director
Can you hear me?
or Deputy Director, could you speak into the mic a little bit more? We're struggling to hear you.
I apologize. Let me turn my volume up. Can you hear me better now?
Yes.
Yeah, so the reason that the capital budget went down is that the federal grant for West Baltimore United, which is $85 million, was moved from fiscal year 26 to fiscal year 27. So the city still is working with the Federal Department of Transportation on that project, but we don't anticipate receiving those funds in fiscal year 26. And so we moved that back to fiscal year 27 to reflect the latest information that we have. And so that's why the capital budget is lower than was in the preliminary plan.
Understood. Any additional questions from the board? Seeing no further questions, I would entertain a motion to approve this item.
So moved.
Is there a second? All those in favor of approving this item say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. The item is approved. The next item, thank you, Deputy Director. The next item on the non-routine agenda is SB 251-1198 from the Department of Human Resources. This request is to approve positions created within the Fire Department. On behalf of DHR, we have Interim Director Tanya Brinkley. Director Brinkley, the floor is yours. Okay.
Good morning. Thank you, Council President Cohen, Mayor Scott. Oh, it'll work. And Comptroller Henry. I'm Tanya Brinkley, the Interim Director of DHR. Okay. Question? Yeah. I'm going to defer it to fire. They have the camera.
Fire, come on up.
Good morning. Good morning, Mr. Mayor, Mr. President, Mr. Comptroller, and committee. Fire is requesting to reclassify 3 vacant paramedic positions to create 2 fire plans reviewer. The goal here is to increase productivity, improve our workflow. Right now, we have 1 sworn chief who is responsible for that area. The assistance is required. He needs the assistance. We're also looking into each one of our service areas to try to make a determination on where we can benefit from civilians or hiring or creating positions for civilians. And that's just to improve our workflow and increase productivity agency-wide. This is one of the areas that we identified that could greatly appreciate or work well with the assistance. So what we did was we actually reached out to other surrounding jurisdictions to find out what they're doing in that area and what that looks like for them, and that included civilian workers. So we think that reclassifying 3 of our vacant paramedic positions to create 2 fire plans reviewer is something that this agency really needs.
Absolutely. I want to just first state the reason I want to just flag this item. This is a good example of real collaboration. This is something that the council has been really concerned about as it relates to the speed of permitting within Baltimore City. We know that this has been a real bottleneck for the department, and we heard loud and clear from folks in the building industry that having these additional pins will be really important toward just operational efficiency. We know that Deputy Mayor Williams has been working on the Be More Fast plan, and I know this was part of his recommendations, but I also do want to thank the council members that have been working on this, the mayor, the city administrator, the fire department. I think we have an obligation to do what is within our power to improve the speed at which we build in Baltimore. We are not exempt from the nation's housing crisis, and making our processes efficient and effective is extremely important to be able to meet the demand of residents that want to live in our city. And so appreciate the quick move and the reclassification, really hoping that we quickly fill these pins so that we're able to get this work done expeditiously, because again, my general sense from the industry is that folks want us to be successful in this realm, that there is a market, that people are looking for our ability to build, and whether it's a small first-time home buyer or whether it's a large developer or anyone in between, we want to make our processes as efficient and effective as possible. With that, Mr. Mayor.
No, thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to just chime in and say that this is exactly example of what you were talking about. We've heard one of the top complaints that I hear from anybody, from someone buying a home or a entrepreneur starting a starting a business, is about the fire marshals and the inspections. And this is something I want to thank Chief Wallace and his team, the administrator, Deputy Mayor Williams, everybody in my administration for their leadership in making sure that we got to this point so that we can get things moving in a faster way, help build housing, have businesses, all the things that will help us have a more thriving economy. That's all.
Amen. Anybody else? All right. Additional questions from the board? Seeing no further questions, I would entertain a motion to approve this item.
So moved.
Second.
Hearing this motion and this second, all those in favor of approving this item, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. The item is approved, and again, appreciate the collaboration across the board to get this done quickly. Looking forward to seeing those folks get hired.
Thank you.
The next item on the non-routine agenda is SB 11347 from Department of Law. This request is to approve a resolution removing owner-occupied properties valued under $250,000 from the 2025 tax sale list. On behalf of Law, we have Chief of Staff Matthew Bradford. Mr. Bradford, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good morning, Council President, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Comptroller, members of the board. The Law Department requests approval of a resolution to remove owner-occupied homes valued at less than $250,000 from the 2025 tax sale. As mentioned in the board's agenda, this is in recognition of the financial challenges faced by many owner-occupants of residential real property valued at less than $250,000 who struggle to pay the taxes and other charges that become liens on their property. And with that, I'll take any questions from the board.
Questions from the board? The board also received a statement in support of this action from Nika Namdi. Ms. Namdi, did you want to share any remarks for the board? Outstanding.
Good morning, everyone. I am Nika Namdi. I'm the Executive Director of the SOS Fund. And we stand in support of removing owner-occupied properties. We do, though, think that the assessed value limit should be raised because we have seen post-COVID in many divested and disinvested neighborhoods, we are seeing market values rise, and as such, we are seeing assessed values rise. So, for example, in Harlem Park, we have seen recently houses appraising and selling at above $400,000. That is going to have an impact on legacy residents. So we just suggest that there's some consideration for raising the assessed value. And the second point I want to make about the importance of removing owner-occupied units and at some point in the future, hopefully heirs properties and misclassified units, is that we have, in the case of one of our clients, she could not be here with us today. She was a 34-year 911 operator in Baltimore City. In August of 2023, she got the 911 operator's property tax credit. She subsequently retired in January of 2024, and her tax credit was removed without notice. She did not know anything about it until she got a final bill and legal notice in February of 2025, which, as you might imagine, upset her. She's living now on a fixed income. And she wasn't notified. She, did her work that she could, and she came up with $1,100 to cover part of the $3,300 bill. Someone sent her to the SOS fund, and we happily agreed to cover the rest. But I would suggest and humbly submit to this body that no one who spent 34 years working 911 in the city of Baltimore should have their tax credit removed in that way. Right? That's just not acceptable. And if not for this particular action of the Board of Estimates, she would have been in tax sale. And we find that to be, problematic. And so I think that until we can get payment plans and until we can get greater use of the property tax, the homeowner's property tax credit utilization, we need to continue, the administration should continue to remove owner-occupied units and heirs and misclassified properties as we go forward. So we do support it, but we would like you all to consider raising the assessed value somewhat. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Namdi. Comptroller?
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for hanging in there without the sweater. All right. Just to be clear, are you asking us to consider raising that threshold now for this year, or you're saying that as we prepare to continue to do this in the future, we should be aware of the fact that assessments are going up and we might want to consider raising this?
Both.
Okay. If you're interested in us doing it this year, do you have data from the people that you've seen coming to you for help to give us an idea of what number you think would be necessary to really maximize the effectiveness of this? I
don't have it in front of me, but Allison Harris from the Pro Bono Resource Center did do some looking at their client base, and I think she wrote in her letter to the administration that it should be $300,000 because we saw a couple, at least we at the SOS Fund saw a couple clients that were like $256,000 or $258,000, and so she looked and did some estimations based on their clients, and she suggested $300,000.
Okay. Well, Mr. Mayor, is this something where we should defer this because finance needs time to consider that request, or is this something where we should move forward with it now and possibly come back with a revision to it?
I think that we should move forward, Mr. Comptroller,
Right.
Just because we're talking about time and notification and all of those things, and have any further discussions as we move forward. But Ms. Comptroller, Mr. President, I think it's also important too that Ms. Namdi brings up a great and excellent point. But we have to, I think where you were getting at, Mr. Comptroller, is we have to. They said also on when the different tiers in the city get evaluated and how we see the responses from those property assessments. So I think that all of that has to be considered, which obviously we can't do here today.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Both.
Thank you, Ms. Namdi. I also want to appreciate and recognize the good work of my colleague, Councilmember Ramos, who, since she got on the council and really long before that, has been advocating for folks to be able to remain in their homes and against any sort of practices that would hurt particularly our most vulnerable residents. With that, I will recognize Councilmember Ramos.
Thank you, Mr. President, Mr. Mayor, and the board. I really appreciate your approving this motion for the fourth year now and fifth year now. Yep. And also wanted to note that this is one step in a longer process regarding reform of the system, which I know the mayor and I have talked about, and we've already committed to moving forward. The next step in that is getting those payment plans, and so finance, I know, is working on that. That is really the linchpin for full reform. So I really very much appreciate the continued commitment to this work. And also one of the other pieces around reform is working with our homeowners now to get them onto the payment plans, get their, the homeowners property tax credit, and we've submitted plans for doing that. So this is comprehensive. This is one step in that, and I just really appreciate continuing to make sure that our residents don't lose their homes just because they can't pay their taxes. I appreciate that. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you for your advocacy, Councilmember Ramos. Mr. Mayor?
I make a motion to approve.
Is there a second? It's been properly moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. This item is approved. The next item on the non-routine agenda is SB 2511037 from Department of Law. This request is to approve a settlement resulting from litigation over a car accident which injured 6 teenagers. On behalf of law, we have Chief of Staff Matthew Bradford. Mr. Bradford, the floor is yours.
Thank you. The Law Department requests approval of 3 settlements related to a motor vehicle incident. The facts alleged are as follows. On October 24th, 2021, shortly after 1 a.m., a BPD officer was tailing a vehicle on East Baltimore Street that he suspected was stolen. As the officer approached the intersection of Baltimore and East Carolyn Streets, he proceeded through a red light with his lights activated but not his sirens. At the same time, a vehicle containing the 3 claimants in this matter proceeded through a green light and collided with the officer's vehicle. As a result, all the parties suffered serious injuries, and each of the claimants here were teenagers at the time of the collision. Although operators of law enforcement vehicles are permitted certain privileges in the course of their duties, they must still operate the vehicle in a reasonable manner. BPD conducted an investigation related to this incident, and ultimately the officer was disciplined. Given the circumstances and the risk of an adverse judgment here, the Law Department recommends approval of these settlements for a total of $397,000, and I'm happy to take any questions from the board.
Questions from the board? All right. Hearing and seeing none, I would entertain a motion to approve this item.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor of approving this item say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, please say nay. This item is approved. Madam Clerk, I need to amend my vote on the capital budget to be an abstention. Apologies for that. Can you please note that I abstain on that item because it is also coming before the City Council?
So noted.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. All right, we are keeping it moving. The next item on the routine agenda is SB 2511093 from the Department of Law. This request is to approve a settlement resulting from litigation over a BPD-involved injury during protests in 2020. On behalf of law, we have Chief of Staff Matthew Bradford. Mr. Bradford, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Law Department requests approval of a settlement related to the claim of Dylan Hildebrand. This matter arises out of a June 1, 2020 altercation between Mr. Hildebrand and BPD. The alleged and disputed facts are as follows. Hildebrand was a photojournalist who participated in the June 1, 2020 protests arising out of the murder of George Floyd. At some point, BPD officers ordered to facilitate crowd movement near Guilford Avenue between East Fayette and East Baltimore Streets. The crowd complied. Hildebrand also complied initially, but an altercation soon followed. Hildebrand claims that he moved away, but due to a disability, could only move slowly. Officers then approached him. He was struck with a riot shield, and then an unknown officer struck him with a baton. He claims he was then forced to the ground and arrested. BPD provided a very different version of events. Per BPD, Hildebrand repeatedly refused instructions to proceed with the rest of the crowd. After several refusals, his detention was ordered. As officers moved closer, Hildebrand pushed a riot shield into an officer's helmet. He was then subdued and arrested. There is no definitive evidence to confirm either version of these events. However, notwithstanding the disputed nature of the altercation, the claimant alleges a violation of his rights and suffered injuries during his arrest. Thus, given the circumstance and the risk of an adverse judgment, the Law Department recommends settlement of this matter in the amount of $75,000, and I'm happy to take questions from the board.
Questions from the board? Hearing and seeing none, I will entertain a motion to approve this item.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor of approving this item say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. The item is approved.
Thank you.
Not a problem. The next item is SB 2511377, a request from the Procurement Office for the board to note an update on the procurement transformation effort. On behalf of procurement, we have, I'm seeing Director Moises. You are not from procurement, but that's okay.
I'm just going to say a couple of words from the Department of Finance and then pass it over to Department of Procurement.
That is fine.
Good morning, Honorable Board. My name is Michael Moxton, Director of the Department of Finance. Just want to quickly say that Department of Finance made an investment in the procurement transformation because procurement is an investment worth making. It's important at the best of times, but it's particularly important in turbulent economic times. Procurement saves us money by letting us purchase goods better, but it's also an investment in our small businesses. It lets us move projects along faster, and ultimately it's why we studied it. We looked at how other cities did it, at where the opportunities were for us to do it better, and we made a plan and implemented it. So this is noting what we've done in the past year and a preview of what's to come. And with that, I will pass it along to our amazing Chief of Procurement, Adam Manning.
Director Manny, what say you, sir?
Good morning, Mr.
morning.
President, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Comptroller, honorable board members. I should be sharing, hopefully, on the screen. Before I get into the presentation, I do want to say, acknowledge Mr. Mayor, City Administrator Leach, Director Moxton, Director Moises' help and guidance with this. Also with me today, I have our Director of Procurement and Contracts, Ms. Kim Moeller, and then the BOP staff who really are part of this, the Deputy CPO, Mr. Bola Washaway, Mr. Tony Reed, our Director of Operations, Mr. Travis Platt, the Operations Manager, and of course the BOP staff that really does everything and has embraced this transformation day in and day out. I don't know if we can pull this up on the screen.
Yeah, are you?
I'm sharing. I thought I was sharing.
What is your name of the web?
Adam Manning.
In case this comes up, Celeste, in case he made a sticker for you.
If you don't mind. My video's on. Shows I am. I'm sure. I signed in. In the meeting.
Yeah.
Modern technology. What a boon.
Do you have the link up somewhere?
link that you sent me.
He's coming.
M-A-N-N-E. M-A-N-N-E.
He should be in now.
Good now? All right.
Rock and roll.
Thank you. I should be. Thank you. Working on it here, modern technology, and I was here early to make sure that this didn't happen.
The
Presentation is right there.
Okay.
Exactly.
So we do
I don't
this.
need to come from over. Okay.
Yeah, let me open this. Well, I guess.
Huh.
There it is.
Yeah. Share and then.
There we go.
Where you go to school?
That's that Loyola education.
All right. Woo.
Mr. Manny?
Thank you, I
Take it away.
appreciate that. So as we move through the procurement transformation, we're going to go over the vision and goals.
Hang on one second.
Yep.
Adam, put where it says from beginning, click that.
I'm sorry?
Where it says from beginning, right there, click that so it's in slide view. Nope.
There you go. He's going there.
There we go.
All right.
But it's still not on the screen that way.
Is it slow?
It's slow, I think.
It's just a lag.
Okay. We'll give
Oh,
it a minute.
no, it's not that slow. Just make sure it's in slideshow view, please.
Didn't come back to
Take it
press
out.
it.
I'm going to step out of the way. Let the
Oh,
people from the
okay.
city
You
take
wanna
care
do
of this.
At any time, you guys can ask me to come around there and fix it.
Oh, yeah. Let's see.
This is why I don't do this that often. I'd rather just.
Listen, I'm actually
Mr.
with
Mayor?
you. I don't enjoy PowerPoint.
Let's see. So you don't think we don't know what we're doing? Let's stop sharing.
And now you got the mayor involved and engaged. Oh,
Oh, it could be. Oh, it's me. Okay. Hold on. Share.
This is why I stay.
Entire screen. Hold on. I got it. I got it.
Video first.
It don't matter. Share.
Adam, we need a procurement for a new computer for you too.
I'm going to have to get one.
Oh, this thing is like slow.
Oh, is it his computer?
when this gets posted to YouTube,
Oh,
I
do
am
we wanna
so going to
switch?
do a clip. I'm going to do a clip for this part.
There you go, everybody.
No, it's not. No. Move.
Go back to WebEx up.
Okay.
There you go.
Share.
Share. Yeah, this is his computer on this part.
This is
But
why I
we had it up. All he had to do was click that button, and it did it.
No,
again.
we did that and it didn't.
I'm enjoying this. This is giving me more time to think about jumping into the pool at Walter P. Carter.
And we're back.
I apologize for the technical difficulties, and I even came here early to make sure I was part of it, that this didn't happen, so strike one. Thank you again for allowing me to come before you to talk about the procurement transformation and the progress that we've made and how we've moved forward with this. I'll see if this catches up to me. If not, we'll continue. Part of what we're going to be going over is the vision and goals, the recommendations from the original procurement transformation plan, some of the positive trends, talking a little bit about the 4 real cornerstones of the transformation plan, which is people, process, policy, and technology, talking about the transformation, and then a summary of what's going on and to continue. Obviously,
Just keep going and I'll pull it up.
all right, thank you. So our real first goal is that we envision that the Bureau of Procurement for the City of Baltimore is a procurement system that is efficient, it's effective, it's transparent, and equitable. We envision a system that is nimble, it's strategic, and it advances the city's equity goals based upon our 4 cornerstones, again, of people, process, policy, and technology. The recommendations, and since we don't have it, I'll just quickly through them, from the original mayor's transformation plan under people. It was restructuring the Bureau of Procurement, organizing the Bureau of Procurement into teams which will be supporting the different departments within the city, develop citywide procurement training, and working with human resources to standardize the job descriptions. Under processes, it was creating a RACI document, responsible, accountable, consulted, informed, as we were continuing through it, and then moving into the policy portion, now that we have it back. Thank you, Madam CA. That's why she's the CA and I'm not. The policies of reviewing our existing procurement policies, creating a centralized procurement manual, developing regulations, streamlining the processes, and then finally using technology to using it as an automation, implementation of increasing use of Workday, strategic sourcing, other items, and then, of course, trying to make ourselves more efficient with that as we go forward. Hopefully this slide will show up. So this slide is showing you the trends that started, and as it started this on the left on the visual, those numbers were the number of procurement requests that were waiting for procurement to act on. So if you look back in January of '23, when we moved over from CityBuy into Workday, with all the procurement staff working, there were still 515 items and solicitations that were waiting to be worked on. And this is set up quarterly. If you flip all the way to April of this year, that number has dropped from the 515 to 138. And this is due some process improvements that we've made to gain efficiencies and how we actually go through the process of procurement. It's increasing staffing, where we have introduced over 12 new hires over the past 24 months, and it's policy changes allowing us to move forward, to continue going forward. So one of the big things with that was the number of procurements that were assigned to each procurement officer. So the upper right-hand corner, if you look at one point, we had a procurement officer when we switched over from CityBuy to Workday, where we had various limits on how people were working. We had one procurement officer who had over 180 items in his queue, which, as you can imagine, is really unbearable. As we move forward into the lower left-hand corner, you can see that number has dropped to where they're really working at 24. And then this February of this year, because of the increased staff and training, we are averaging about 13 requests that are there. Director Moxton has personally challenged me to make sure that we keep it at 20 or below as we continue through with the staff, so that way we are turning items over and we're moving efficiently and quickly. So procurement is based into 3 main business units. It's our contract administration unit, procurement cards, and of course procurement operations. We have been adding resources across the 3, and in procurement operations, one of the big things is we are pushing heavily to have all of the procurement staff certified. We are also we've moved to a teams-based method where we now have a team of procurement officers supporting different departments across the board. In contract administration, we are pushing heavily on for digitizing our forms and submissions to make it more efficient as we're working with the departments. And we're continuing to move through that also in procurement and P cards. And one of the big things with the contract administration is to start taking some reduced workload off of the procurement officers, specifically as we come to the board for renewals of contracts and increases so that we can be proactive with that as we move forward. And again, with procurement cards, increasing our rebate and revenues, making sure we're getting the maximum that we can. And with the procurement operations, making sure that we are all certified as we're continuing forward. This chart just shows how we've added resources based upon the board's approval from 23 through the current where we are now. And I know I'm going a little fast here. With the processes, we just wanted to show where we've made significant changes in the processes. We've moved former physical forms into electronic forms, which are now part of Workday. The non-compete procurement forms specifically, the emergency procurement is now part of Workday. Just yesterday, we demonstrated to our partners in SMB&D on bringing them into the requisition process at the beginning of the process, not at the end of the process, so we can be more efficient. We're also working to do that for the Wage Commission to bring them in and forward. As we continue training, we have invited other departments to give training to the Bureau of Procurement. The Solicitor's Office has given us training. SMB&D has come out. Mr. Comptroller, your office has come out several times in Human Resources, and we in Procurement are going out into the agencies to provide training also. We also have our on-demand training. We have 3 modules currently available in Workday. We are beta testing the 4th module now, which is the partnership between procurement and the solicitor's office, and we're alpha testing time and material contracting. So we hope to have the one with the solicitor's office out by the beginning of the fiscal year. And our P-card group, of course, is moving forward with lots of training. Policy changes that we've enacted is getting certifications. In the past, nobody in the Bureau had to be certified. We are working to have everybody become a certified public procurement buyer, a certified public procurement manager. Our 3 out of our 4 P-card team have received their national certifications. The 4th person is beginning their study. We've also, based upon Mr. Mayor wanting people back in the office, we've mandated that the staff is in the office 3 days a week. And we have all hands on deck Tuesdays where everybody's there. If you'd like to experience some positive energy, come by 7 East Redwood on the 10th floor. We have a lot of positive energy going, and you can actually see and feel the palpable change that's going on within the Bureau. The regulations, we are working on updating the procurement regulations. We have a cross-functional team working on those. Actually, every member of this board has a representative on that team as we move through it, as we're continuing to bring them forward, and we hope to have those done within the next 12 months. Every time you come across one item in the regulations, there are 75 documents someplace else that have to be addressed. And then we're also looking to bring before the City Council at one point an increase for the procurement thresholds. And these are the current thresholds. This is still part of the transformation plan. And with the big one is we want to move those formal procurement numbers from 50,000 to 250,000, which will allow for change in staff workloads as we're going through it, and also allow us to really spend more time focusing on those high dollar, high volume procurements, which require a lot more detail to them. Technology-wise, oh, look at that, we'll see if it makes it. We have instituted, we did a deep dive and a health check with Workday to see where we can do some strategic planning, getting this through. This is how we've actually brought some of these items forward. More utilization from Microsoft, our online procurement, and we are using a program called Monday.com to keep ourselves in the Bureau organized across every level. So we've started using data that we've captured to actually build our teams. We looked at both quantitative and qualitative data so that we can make sure that we have a good balance between everybody. We are tracking the transformation itself. I meet with my leadership team monthly, and we go through every item on the transformation plan, seeing where we are, what do we need to do, how do we continue to move forward with it. We are also tracking all of our procurements over $50,000 and under $50,000 to gather additional data points. I know, Mr. Director, when somebody calls me and says, what's going on with this RFQ or this RQ or this PO, we are now putting everything in so we can see when that item was assigned, went into Workday, when it was assigned to procurement, when it was assigned to a procurement officer, when they took action, and if they have any notes on it, such as we sent it back, or it's with our partners with SMB&D or Wage Commission, and we're waiting to try and be a lot more efficient. We have the majority of the procurement staff on. We've been beta testing it. We hope to have everybody on board by the end of this month. And once we finish it, hopefully at the new year, we will give access to the department directors and agency fiscal officers so that they can go in and see exactly what those notes are and help us out to move forward. A quick recap on the summary. In the past, for people, we were limited. We had a short staff. We've increased people. We've increased staffing. Thank you. We're moving to get everybody certified in our processes. As you well know, they were outdated and inefficient. We're always updating our processes as we've added staff, and processes, as we track it, doesn't have an end date. It's always continuing changing. The same thing with our policy. There was a lack of standardization for policies and procedures. We're updating those using the cross-functional team and within procurement, and we're looking to more and more digitize our processes so that we can become efficient and, again, be more nimble, and, again, using the technology as we go forward to make sure that we are moving to a proactive stance and not reactive, getting before the board items then when we need more spending authority, when renewals come, so we have less and less of we like to backdate it and be proactive in getting it there. That's really the end of the presentation. Just a couple of things. Yes, sir?
Just finish up, and then I'm going to go to the
Sure.
mayor.
As we were looking at, just so you can see, as we were looking at changing the regulations, we've broken it into different buckets, what we need the BOE's approval, what we need the city council, what requires changes to the charter, and then lastly is our organizational chart, which shows the new teams as they are set up and moving forward.
You said this has been emailed to us?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
It was part of when I submitted it into the BOE submission.
Mr. Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Adam, and your team. I just wanted to take a moment to just thank you guys for this progress, and you, Mr. Director, and you, Madam CA, because we have been talking about procurement reform literally since the beginning of our first term, and I want everyone to know that this is what procurement reform looks like. We heard, especially before and during the pandemic, about how old, how outdated, how antiquated our processes were, and we've done the tough work, right? But it's also not the fast work. Procurement reform isn't fast when you're talking about replacing systems that were in place when the council president and I were in pre-K, right? You're talking about doing the real hard, tough work to make these things more modern so that our residents, potential businesses, potential residents, all these folks who have to deal with city procurement alike have a better experience. So I just want to say thank you for the progress that has been made, but also for what is yet to come, and then ask just my first question about what, in your estimation, is the next big step in the procurement reform that will have the biggest benefit for our residents and everyone.
As we continue with the training and development, and we're moving not only within BOP, but within the entire organization, that's one. The next really large hurdle will be the change in the procurement regulations, bringing that before this board and the city council, having the thresholds increased, and really starting to optimize what those regulations are, which really explains how the city is doing business with non-governmental agencies. There are several other initiatives we're taking, nothing that's written in stone at this point. We're looking at creating an internal Baltimore certified buyers program so that when new people come into the city, before they're really given access that they go through a training program. They understand procurement, they understand Workday, and they're just not thrown into it. There are several other items we're working on with internal and external partners to try and make these things more efficient.
Thank you. So, Adam, you're saying that all of our stuff is outdated, including the thresholds? I'm shocked. Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Before, I'm going to go to Mr. Comptroller.
Thank you, Mr. President. Actually, Mr. Mayor, I remember our first conversation about procurement in the summer of 2020, after the primary in your office, in what's his office, upstairs, and what's the sign says? Good food isn't fast, and fast food isn't good. Yeah. All right. I get that this is a lot. And I'm glad that we are moving on it. Your presentation made two references to the concept that there is some aspects of this that can be done essentially by fiat, like that's just policy changes, you just do it. Some of it has to be done by changes approved here at the BOE. Some of it has to be done by changes approved at the city council, and then some of it is going to take charter amendments, which is going to involve going to the council and then going to the voters at the next election. I saw two references to that breakdown. Does that list exist showing what are the things in each of those categories?
Yes.
Okay, is that in this presentation?
No, but I can get that for you.
If you could please send us that list.
Sure.
And does that list include a timeline in which you expect to do these parts of it by X date?
It doesn't have that timeline. We've been working with the cross-functional group on a lot of this as we're doing it. Before the meeting started, I was actually talking with Councilwoman Ramos, and she really wants us to make sure that we can get by May of next year, and making sure that we have everything done early, so that is a challenge to us to do it. But the items that we can change internally, we've already started making those changes within BOP.
Yes.
The items that we need to bring before this board.
Like the teams?
Yep.
Yeah,
The teams have already been done. Internally, in the past, it used to be that a procurement officer, one, only handled items under $25,000, and then everything else was handled by the procurement officer, two, which was why there was such a disparity in workload and complexity. We've already changed that internally, where we've increased that limit, where the procurement officer ones are now looking at items under $100,000. While the procurement officer twos are on the higher. If it's something incredibly complex, we would bring it to a procurement officer two because of their more experience. We've already started making those changes, but we will get a full list of everything out to you.
Okay. How many, actually, you know what, I'll check that later because it's in the, the number of people on the procurement card team is available in your org chart?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
There's a total of three.
There's a total of three. It's just three people. Okay. I didn't see or hear any reference to moving to best value contracting.
That is something that we have already started doing internally as we're looking at this. I know it's a big thing for this board.
Right.
It is Councilwoman Ramos specifically mentioned that as we're doing it in the charter and making those changes to the city council. But as we have been going through it more and more, as more of these RFQs have been coming into us with the scope and specification, we have been pushing back and working with the departments to say, do we really want this as low bid, or do we want this as best value? And that also ties into the training of both us and the departments as we're moving forward. We've started doing more and more of the RFPs and less of the IFBs, where it makes sense in a business sense as we're going forward. We're also looking as bringing forward is the IDIQ, indefinite delivery, indefinite quantity contracts, and we're looking at job order contracting.
I just heard his heart rate go up.
Yes.
Yeah.
In job order contracting, the state of Maryland was a lead agency for NASPO, and we have been working with Gordian, and they've supplied all of the contractual documents. I've been working with the solicitor's office. We've been going through them. There are some hurdles we have to overcome. The plan is to make sure that we have all the legal hurdles overcome. Then we can come back to the mayor, the department directors, give a presentation, get their feedback, and then come back to this board for approval when we're all ready to move forward.
You had shared a draft template of a rubric for best value contracting.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and the council president's office and my office reviewed it. We sent back some proposed changes. I'm unclear if there was ever a second round of response where you said, yes, these changes have been accepted and included, or we didn't do all of them or any of them, and here's why.
We took most of the changes. I think there was the one point that we did not, I can't remember what it was off the top of my head, which we had responded to saying that we can take these all in. I know a big item for you specifically, sir, was the small minority women-owned businesses.
And the local hires.
And the local hires, that we continue to do that. And yes, all those were taken in.
Okay.
As we're looking forward to it. We've been working more and more with our partners with SMB&D to make sure that we can reach out to these smaller local businesses to make sure that we're bringing them in. We're working with a larger business partner to include, it's a piggyback contract, but we've been working with them specifically to ensure that we're getting an MBE, WBE within Baltimore to move forward with it. We have been asked to be the lead agency for the NACO, National Association of Counties, public PPP, which is their procurement arm, to be the lead agency in going on in the future for furniture contracting, where then we can then work on it and making sure that while we put it out on a national level, that is specific for Baltimore, and we are getting our small minority businesses, we're getting everything in. It's a big hurdle, but we're not there yet, but I think these are starting conversations.
We've had a number of conversations about this in briefings on individual items, but I wanted to share with the board as a whole that one of the concerns I had raised and which you're trying to address is that one of the, I'm going to call it a tactic, one tactic by which we can have procurement be more effective in addressing more of the agency's requests is to use more cooperative contracts where we don't have to go through the whole hassle of the putting out the RFP and like all that's been done by somebody else somewhere else. And we can just say, yes, we'll take that. The downside of that is while it is quicker and easier, while it's faster, like the food, is that we, generally speaking, give up our right to enforce our own MBE and WBE goals on those contracts. And so I appreciate the fact that you're working on finding ways for us to do that when we're doing the larger piggyback contracts. What I would encourage both this board to consider and the council to consider as we look at changes to the regulations is finding some way to make sure that we protect our own. We've already made a commitment to MBE and WBE, and we need to make sure that that commitment is protected as we move into an era where there are more piggyback contracts. I didn't see any reference in this.
Just real quick, Comptroller. Mr. Mayor, you want to just quick
Yeah, I just want to jump in on that point, Mr. Comptroller, Mr. President, really quickly. So, yes, I think that you bring up a great point. That is also one of the biggest challenges because many jurisdictions in Maryland that have these contracts don't have the same beliefs that we have. I think it's even more important now that we stand by our beliefs. As we know, MBE as a whole is under attack from the highest office on the land, and we have to be sure that we protect our beliefs, that businesses that represent, while maybe the minority in the state, represent the majority of people that live in Baltimore City. We have to protect those programs and make sure that we do those investments and balance that with the needs to have things be more efficient and faster.
100%. I didn't see any reference in the presentation to moving to electronic bidding.
There is a work group that's working with BSIT, looking at a contract lifecycle management process. We're looking and bringing that in as part of that program when it's done. This is, it's been out on the street, BSIT is running it, and we're looking to do that through that program to actually for both health, which is part of it with their grants contracts, and with BOP, to allow us to have a much better procurement contract file, but also to be able to do that. I know that's a big thing for you, sir. Unfortunately, the Workday system is not, that we can't set up an electronic lockbox where things come in and they're locked and you can't see them. And that's been the big hurdle.
Okay.
With the other system, which we're looking at, I have stressed that that is something that we have to have.
Sure.
So that way, when it's there, any of the formal procurements come in, they're in a lockbox, and then when we have to open them formally, like later this afternoon, your office can come in and they'll be the ones who would open it up and then open, and we can go through it.
That's a great segue to my next question.
I figured as much.
Would Bureau of Procurement rather send over staff to help us with the physical task of dealing with opening bids? Or would you rather transfer funds over to us so we can hire more administrative
I would actually
assistants?
rather change the charter and have everything come to us instead of to you. But yes, we have, we are.
I'm not against that as an option if, but that still doesn't solve the problem of between now and December of 2026, which would be the earliest we could have something go into effect.
Just this morning, I emailed my staff saying that we had the bid openings today, and that if you have an item that is being opened, please be here for it. And I think there's only one person.
Yeah, that's the, okay, so I appreciate, that's a, like a, what's it, there's an old joke, what do you call a busload of lawyers at the bottom of the ocean?
No, not at our expense.
Okay, all right, that's fair. That's a wonderful opening offer, but having your staff show up to sit in the audience and watch my staff do all of the work of opening bids and be there in case there are questions is not what we're asking for, because my staff are being pulled off of other duties in order to literally open packages and stack things.
I understand,
Okay.
sir. Like I said, I would prefer to have everything come to us.
Yeah.
But if I am correct, the city charter says specifically
I know.
that it must be opened by the comptroller's
Yeah.
office. We can.
Which
I
is
will
why
work
we've
with-
been pushing for electronic bidding
and
for as
I'm
long
right
as
there
we
with you.
have.
I will work with your staff to see if we can help out in other ways.
I would definitely appreciate that. I'm looking over at the clerk to see whether that is a sufficient level of commitment or if she was looking for more.
The clerk would like to abstain from this conversation for now.
Thank you.
Okay.
Noted.
And then, let's see, I think, okay, to what degree will artificial intelligence be implemented in the procurement transformation process?
We have steered away from it at this
Okay.
time until after a new CIO is on board and we have directions with it. I am not technology adverse, but something of that sort, I do take a very conservative look at. We can tell.
The mayor has tried to control himself right now.
I know. But we've actually received responses that you can tell have been written by ChatGPT or AI. And we want to make sure that we are not getting that, and that on our teams, we're not trying to come up with a spec and scope that says we're just going to use AI to figure out what we need. It does need to be done by subject matter experts who understand what the business is and what they're doing. But we've held off until we get guidance from BSIT when they're going forward. So it's not in our plan. It's a thought, but we don't want to go down that road yet.
Okay. All right. I've monopolized the conversation long enough. Thank you,
Council
Mr. President.
I'm going to go to Director Zaid.
Very quick one. I just wanted to thank you for the IDIQ ideas and the cooperative purchasing, seeing it in Texas, seeing it in Illinois, seeing it everywhere else. It really make things a lot better. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
I'm going to just sort of amen what Comptroller Henry said around best value. We know that's been something that I think this board has had particular interest in, the council has had interest in, just knowing that what has often happened with lowest bid is that someone will make a low bid and then they'll come back 8 months later and say, we need more in order to achieve the goals of the contract. And so I would love to see us move expeditiously in that direction. We'll also second both the mayor and comptroller's point about this has been a real challenge for our city for a very long time in terms of transparent but also efficient procurement. So do appreciate the work, do appreciate the back and forth with our offices. Looking forward to continuing the conversation. With that, if there are no other questions, I am going to note this item by the board.
Thank you, sir.
The next item on the non-routine agenda is SB 2511253 from procurement. This request is to reject all bids received for a contract for pest control. On behalf of law, we have Director Adam Manny. Director Manny, the floor is yours again, sir.
Thank you. We're asking the board to reject all bids. This was a solicitation, an IFB, for pest control, integrated pest management systems in several city-owned buildings. This was put on the street. There were 11 different proposers this was sent to, advertised in the papers, and on the EMA site for the state. We received one proposal. After review of the proposal, we sent it on to SMB&D, who reviewed it. It did not meet the standards that they had set with the percentages. We then issued a cure notice asking them to cure that. They were unable to do that. And after discussion with DPW, since they weren't able to cure and get the correct percentages for the SMB and WBE, we're asking not to award, and we're working with DPW to come up with alternative solutions to have this services done.
Got it. Questions from the board? Hearing and seeing none.
Make a motion to approve, so it's noted, right?
No, I think.
Yeah, make a motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor of approving this item say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. The item is approved. Thank you. The next items on the non-routine agenda are all substantively similar, so we will hear them all at one time. There are walk-ons for travel to the ICSC conference. They are all for the following: SB 2511400, Council Employee Travel Request, Antonio Glover, $4,332.51. SB 2511491, Council Employee Travel Request, Zeke Cohen, $2,422.95. SB 2511394, Council Employee Travel Request, Sharon Green Middleton, $4,568.51. SB 2511396, Council Employee Travel Request, Jermaine Jones, $3,682.44. On behalf of my office, we have Chief of Staff Maggie Master. Chief of Staff Maggie Master, the floor is yours.
Thank you. And good almost afternoon, esteemed members of the board and tech support. The Council President's Office is presenting these travel items as walk-ons in order to obtain approval prior to the travel dates. The ICSC Las Vegas Conference is an annual conference gathering industry leaders in commercial real estate. The purpose of the organization is to promote and elevate marketplaces and spaces where people shop, dine, and gather in community. City officials have attended the conference for many years in order to connect with the private sector actors to foster vibrant spaces in Baltimore and elevate the diversity of our city. It is a unique opportunity to meet with those who can bring grocery stores to food deserts and mixed-use development to underdeveloped areas. With that, I will take any questions from the honorable board members.
Mr. Mayor?
Make a motion to approve these items.
Second.
I will note that I am going to be abstaining, and I believe the comptroller is as well. That said, all those in favor of approving these items say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay.
Abstain.
Abstain. This item is approved.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No, you made that, you said that.
We read them all, so it's okay to just vote on them all at once, right?
Yes.
Yeah, he said that, yeah.
So-
You're good.
Yeah,
We're good.
great. Great. As there is no more business before the board, we will now adjourn this meeting. Before we dismiss this meeting, I want to announce for the public that our annual City Council Taxpayers Night will be held next week on May 15th in the council chamber. Now that this board has approved the FY 2026 Ordinance of Estimates, we will introduce it to the council at our next regular meeting on Monday night. We will have a special meeting at 12:45 p.m. on Wednesday, May 15th, to introduce the city's school budget, and our taxpayer night will begin at 6 p.m. that evening for residents to offer their opinions on the mayor's proposed budget. We look forward to welcoming you and your testimony on this important piece of legislation. The next regular meeting of the Board of Estimates will occur on Wednesday, May 21st, 2025 at 9 a.m. I thank everyone for participating and tuning in. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone, and apologies for the late start today. The Board of Estimates meeting this morning has run long, and we needed a minute to get our bid opening organized. So this is the Board of Estimates bid opening for May 7th, 2025. We have no addenda to announce today, so there are no changes to upcoming openings that we are aware of as of today. And we are opening 2 bids today. The first is for Public Works. Yeah. It is contract WC 1282. This is for water main replacement and rehabilitation at Franklin Square neighborhood and vicinity. And up first we have.
Good morning, Madam Clerk. Our first bid is from Robert E. Harrington. Or sorry, R.E. Harrington, from Robert E. Harrington.
Sign it.
This has a duplicate. It also has a bid bond. And the total bid.
Hold on just one second. I don't have a column for bond.
Sorry.
That's okay. I think I can put it in. I'm scared I'm going to mess up the formatting.
Do you want me to put it in?
I'm just going to start a new column and we'll fix it later.
Okay.
Okay.
The total bid is $21,144,250.
May I see a copy?
Yes. I want to give you the right page. Sorry. Like, maybe you'll have better fingers. It's not effectively 209.
You said 209?
Effectively.
Kind of, sort of 209.
It's not marked. Oh, it is marked. Never mind, I can't read.
We're challenged today. 209. Okay, that number was 21,145,250.00.
I have a different number. I have 21,144,250. Decimal point 00.
Let me check myself one more time. Oh, I totally misread and misheard. That number is 21,144. comma 250.00.
That's correct.
Sorry, I don't know why that took me so long to
It's okay.
to articulate.
This was our warm-up exercise today.
Yeah. So that bidder was R.E. Harrington for $21,144,250.00. Pardon me.
Bless you. Okay, next up is a bid from Monumental Paving and Excavating Incorporated. Okay. We have a duplicate and we have a bid bond.
You want to hand me the dupe? Thank you.
And the total bid amount for Monumental is $18 million and 0 cents. Extremely even.
Very even. So we had one dupe, one original flash drive,
No flash drives for these.
and we do have the bond.
Mhm.
And that number was 18,000,000.00.
That's correct.
That bidder was Monumental Paving and Excavating, Inc. for $18 million even. Thanks, Tawanda. And up next,
Up next, we have civil construction. Yes, we have civil construction. LLC. I have their bid bonds. I've given you their duplicate.
Thank you.
The total bid for civil is $19,543,158.50.
that number was 19,543,158.00.
Nope, 0.50.
What I'm doing, messing up today. 19,543,158.50.
That's correct.
Got it. Okay. That bidder was Civil Construction LLC for $19,543,158.50. And we have one dupe, one original, and yes, we had the bond. Thanks, Tawanda. Thank you.
Okay.
Opened right to that.
Our next bid is from Spinello Companies. I've given you the duplicate. I have the original. We have a bid bond. And the total bid amount is $23,843,300.00.
That number was 23,843,300.00.
That's correct.
Okay, and we had one copy, one original. And that bidder was Spinello for $23,843,300.00.
Alrighty, next.
It didn't staple very well.
Yeah, next up, we have a bid from Commercial Utilities. I have their bid bond. Apologies, I have their cover sheet for their duplicate.
Oh, thank you. Maybe we'll share a binder clip with them.
Their bid, and their total bid amount for commercial is $19,511,524.25.
That was 19,511,524.25.
That is correct.
Okay, that bidder was Commercial Utilities for $19,511,524.25. Tawanda, can you binder clip that?
And with this too.
Thank you.
Okay.
Oh, two.
Nope, it's one duplicate. There's,
Oh, I
I think
understand.
there's some extra credit on there.
Did you mark the total, or did they do that for us?
They did that.
Oh, that was very nice.
As a reminder, everything we say during bid openings is non-binding.
That's correct. It doesn't matter how nicely you tab.
Even if we like how you binded things. Anyways, last up for 1218, water contract 1218, Anchor Construction Corporation. I have given you the duplicate.
Yes.
I have the original in front of me.
Do we have a bond?
We have a bid bond, clearly marked. Thank you, thank you, Anchor. And the total bid amount is $25,419,251.50.
That number was 25,419,251.50.
That is correct.
That bidder was Anchor Construction Corporation for $25,419,251.50. And that was our final of 6 bidders, correct?
Yes.
Yes. That was our final of 6 bidders for WC 1282 for the Department of Public Works, water main replacement and rehabilitation at Franklin Square neighborhood and vicinity. Thanks, Tawanda.
Thank you.
Up next, for Recreation and Parks, we have RP 22803, Garrett Park, Phase 3, Southwest Entryway Improvements.
Cool. Our first bid is from Monumental Paving and Excavating. I'm going to hand you the duplicate.
Thank you.
Monumental submitted a duplicate in your hands and an original in my hands. They have submitted a bid bond with us.
I think I have a total right on the front page. Is that right?
Yeah, oh, yes. This is a Rec and Parks one where Rec and Parks has a nice little cover sheet that says the total. Thank you, Recreation and Parks. The total amount is $442,000.00.
Okay, that number was 442,000.00.
Correct.
That bidder was Monumental Paving and Excavating, Inc. for $442,000 even. Thanks. And,
All right, and our last bid that we've received for RP 22803 is for Allied Contractors Incorporated. They've submitted 1 duplicate in your hands, 1 original in my hands, and I can see that they have submitted a bid bond.
Thank you.
The total amount of their bid is $276,000.
That number was 276,000.00.
Correct.
That bidder was Allied Contractors, Inc. for $276,000 even. And that was our final?
Correct.
Of 2 bidders for Recreation and Parks RP 22803, Garrett Park Phase 3 Southwest Entryway Improvements. And that was our final opening for today. So our next bid opening is on May 21st at 12 noon. So thanks everyone for tuning in. We should have results posted by close of business today, if not earlier. And thanks again.